was a more moderate or measured approach. This is saying, correct me if you disagree, other health care is going to go away because there's going to be one government system for most people.
Your health care will be good as it is right now, and you'll have the option of actually making more money if you're a union member. I've been negotiating union contracts since I was 19 years old. Every raise we ever got went to what? Health care costs. So if you don't have to pay all that cost into health care, you can actually put that back in your wages because you have a health care plan that's equitable for everyone.
What do you say to the political part? We just heard Kerry say, look, Bernie Sanders, whatever you think, he's not going to be a nationally viable candidate. That's what he said it nicely. He said it more as a compliment to Biden, but I think, tell me, you're in politics, I think that's what I heard.
You did hear that. And a point that the senator made, the secretary made, that I would like to argue is that he said that we couldn't win Colorado, we couldn't win Arizona. I just said we won 73% of the Latino vote in Nevada. The Latinos in Colorado and in Arizona look a lot like the Latinos in Nevada, and they love Bernie Sanders.
Take a look at the overall delegate count here, because this is something we keep an eye on. We try to be fair to all the candidates.
Sure.
There's a situation where Biden can win. I'm looking at Bernie Sanders with 45 delegates, Pete Buttigieg with 26, Joe Biden with 15. There's a situation where Biden wins tonight, gets his due. Any winner deserves their due.
Absolutely.
But Sanders could be out, what, by how many delegates by Tuesday?
This is a long ball game. I've been running campaigns for 31 years. You got to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. We've been in California for 6 months. We have 150 staff there, 22 offices. The key to winning these is being in those diverse communities early and showing them respect. Black and brown voters don't want staff used as window dressing anymore. They want us to come to our community and spend some money.
Who are you talking about when you say that?
I'm saying, let's take Iowa, for example.
But who are you talking about? A specific campaign?
Any campaign I've worked on in 31 years, they've all done the same thing.
Staff is window dressing anyone in this cycle?
Look,
if you're going to throw out a charge, I just want to know who it's about.
You can take that for just about any campaign when it comes to people of color. You ask any voter of color in South Carolina, is when does people show up in your neighborhoods? It's the last 3 weeks. They'll show up in a church, they'll roll out an endorsement and think you're going to vote for them.
There you have it. And Chuck, concise, which we appreciate because I got a lot of guests to get to. Appreciate your perspective as well. Hitting a lot of different campaigns. Up next, we're going to find out what people right here in Columbia, South Carolina think about the candidates, what we've heard, and where we're headed. Who has the best shot to beat Trump? And don't forget tonight, when the results start rolling in, you'll want to be with us. Brian Williams and Nicole Wallace anchor our special coverage. That's coming up in just over an hour on MSNBC.
Now starting at $7.99. Now that's eating good in the neighborhood.
The good news, our protection lasts all day. The bad news, your patience might not. Depend Fit Flex underwear offers your best comfort and protection guaranteed. Because perfect or not, life's better when you're in it. Be there with Depend.
You wouldn't accept an incomplete job from anyone else. Why accept it from your allergy pills? Flonase relieves your worst symptoms, including nasal congestion, which most pills don't. Flonase helps block 6 key inflammatory substances. Most pills only block 1. Flonase.
Once weekly Ozempic is helping many people with type 2 diabetes like James lower their blood sugar. A majority of adults who took Ozempic reached an A1C under 7 and maintained it.
Here's your A1C.
Oh, my A1C is under 7.
And you may lose weight. Adults who took Ozempic lost on average up to 12 pounds.
I lost almost 12 pounds.
Oh.
For those also with known heart disease, Ozempic lowers the risk of major cardiovascular events such as heart attack, stroke, or death.
It lowers the risk.
Oh.
And I only have to take it once a week.
Oh. Ozempic is not for people with type 1 diabetes or diabetic ketoacidosis. Do not share needles or pens. Don't reuse needles. Do not take Ozempic if you have a personal or family history of medullary thyroid cancer, multiple endocrine neoplasia syndrome type 2, or if you are allergic to Ozempic. Stop taking Ozempic and get medical help right away if you get a lump or swelling in your neck, severe stomach pain, itching, rash, or trouble breathing. Serious side effects may include pancreatitis. Tell your doctor if you have diabetic retinopathy or vision changes. Taking Ozempic with a sulfonylurea or insulin may increase low blood sugar risk. Common side effects are nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, stomach pain, and constipation. Some side effects can lead to dehydration, which may worsen kidney problems.
Once weekly Ozempic is helping me reach my blood sugar goal.
pay as little as $25 per prescription. Ask your healthcare provider today about once-weekly Ozempic.
I'm your mother-in-law, and I like to question your every move. Like this left turn.
It's the next one.
You always drive this slow.
How did you make someone I love?
That must be why you're always so late.
I do not speed, and that's saving me cash with DriveWise.
Yeah, my son, he did say that you were the safe option.
And that's the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
So get Allstate.
Stop bossing.
Where good drivers save 40% for avoiding mayhem like me. It's my son's favorite color. You should try it. You always drive like an old lady.
You're an old lady.
We are back at the Lizard's Thicket in Columbia, South Carolina. Today's specials are democracy. I want to get right into it with some of the folks we've been seeing here. How are you doing? Did you vote today? Looks like it.
Did.
Who did you vote for?
I voted for Joe Biden.
Why?
I feel that he's a man of integrity, and to echo what James Clyburn and John Kerry said earlier, I feel he has the best chance to win the key states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, Ohio, and Wisconsin.
And did you have a second choice?
All right, my second choice would be Elizabeth Warren.
Okay. So we got a Biden and a Warren vibe here. What about you? You agree?
Yes, absolutely. I agree.
And why Biden?
Down ticket. I think he's our best chance.
So when you look at Bernie Sanders, what do you think? Can you say it on television?
I cannot.
What about you?
Sorry.
What about you?
Yeah, I respect Bernie Sanders, and I think he does have some good ideas, and I actually think the universal health care, I'm not sure if it's viable yet, but I think that eventually it needs to be done.
Very interesting. So we're hearing from some folks here talking about voting for Biden, but being open to some of Sanders' ideas. It looks like you voted. Who'd you vote for?
I voted for Sanders today.
Why?
He's just an inspirational guy. I'm British, so I know that Medicare for all can work because I'm from that system. And he fights for the vulnerable.
How many times have you been able to vote in this country?
Since 2012.
Yeah.
And I voted for him last time against Hillary.
So you've been a long time Bernie Sanders person.
Very inspired by Bernie.
Let me come over here. What about you?
Yeah, we've always supported Bernie, but we'll vote for whoever the candidate is no matter what because we want to beat Trump.
Why Sanders for you?
Sanders has always been consistent throughout. He seems to really understand what the middle class need, and I like Medicare for all. He cares about the environment, which is important. I think he'll root out the corruption and the money that has taken over our government, which is the biggest thing that will, I think, fix everything else.
Very interesting. By the way, welcome to America. Participating in our
18 years.
Yeah, 18 years, a good long run. I want to move through a little bit more of the room here as we've been talking to folks. So come on with me. What about you? I saw you nodding a little bit earlier. Let me turn around and say, did you vote today?
Yes, I did.
And who did you vote for?
Joe Biden.
Why?
Experience. I think he's willing and open to work across the table with everyone. Objective, positive, and I've met him before on more than one occasion. His demeanor and disposition was most appropriate.
We just heard from some guests and some of the supporters of Biden here today saying the other thing they're concerned about with Sanders is that he can't beat Trump. Do you find that a good argument, or you're just more focused on who's right on the issues?
He's right on the issues.
Yeah. So the electability thing, forget it. Let them worry about that.
More the issues.
Yeah. All right, great. Well, look, we're hearing from some of the people here. Thanks to everyone for participating. We got a lot more in the show here from Lizard's Thicket. We will be right back.
It's time to get a whole new perspective on Ram trucks. Because to us, there are no small jobs, no little tasks. And when it comes to innovation, there are no modest ideas. No wonder why more people are switching to Ram than ever before. Ram trucks, back-to-back Motor Trend Truck of the Year.
Now get an average $13,047 in total values on the 2020 Ram 1500 EcoDiesel, plus these additional incentives.
If you have moderate to severe plaque psoriasis, flakes can be a reminder of your struggles with the symptoms. That's why there's Illumia. With just 2 doses, a majority of people were clear or almost clear.
Don't use if you're allergic to Illumia or any of its ingredients. Before starting treatment, your doctor should check for tuberculosis and infections. Illumia may increase your risk of infections and lower your ability to fight them.
This could be your chance to leave your psoriasis symptoms behind. Ask your doctor for Illumia today for a clearer tomorrow.
Who doesn't love a deal? I do. Check out the United Explorer card. Saving on this,
Saving on this. Saving in here. Rewarded.
Learn more at theexplorercard.com.
I'm a do-it-yourselfer, so when I needed legal advice, I just decided to go to law school and handle it myself. Just kidding. I hated school.
If you aren't interested in becoming a lawyer yourself, call LegalZoom and we'll connect you with an actual attorney.
Want to brain better? Unlike ordinary memory supplements, Nariva has clinically proven ingredients that fuel 5 indicators of brain performance: memory, focus, accuracy, learning, and concentration. Try Nariva for 30 days and see the difference.
I raised my credit score by 8 points instantly.
Boom! 19 points. Experian Boost is easy, it's fast, it saves me money, and it boosted my credit score.
Boost your credit scores instantly with Experian Boost. Free only at Experian.com/boost.
Can my side be firm?
Mine's super soft. With the Sleep Number 360 Smart Bed, you can both adjust your comfort with your Sleep Number setting.
But can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It intelligently senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both effortlessly comfortable.
And snoring?
No problem. And done.
So I'll wake up ready for anything?
Oh, we've got you back.
So you can really promise better sleep?
Not promise, prove. It's our leap year special. Save up to $600 on select Sleep Number 360 smart beds. Plus 0% interest for 4 years on all smart beds. Ends Monday.
Noom is made for the real world.
I'm a third-generation candy maker.
It's so sustainable, and I don't have to deprive myself.
I taste candy every day for a living, and if I can lose weight on Noom, so can you. Visit Noom.com and change your life for good.
Best Fiends. It's more than a game. Collect tons of cute characters. Solve thousands of fiendishly fun puzzles. Download Best Fiends for free today. That's friends without the R. Best Fiends.
We do it every night.
Every night. I live alone, but I still do it every night.
Right after dinner.
Definitely after meatloaf. Like clockwork.
Do it. Run your dishwasher every night with Cascade Platinum. A load with as few as 8 dishes is all it takes to save water. An Energy Star certified dishwasher uses less than 4 gallons per cycle, while hand washing uses that every 2 minutes. So do it. Run your dishwasher every night with Cascade Platinum, the surprising way to save water.
And welcome back. We are now just about 2 hours away from polls closing here on a big day in South Carolina. We have a special panel previewing the big night. Mark Claxton is the director of the Black Law Enforcement Alliance. Corinne Jean-Pierre and Jonathan Capehart, of course, are MSNBC election analysts for us. When you look at these issues, do you see any candidates who really broke through on civil rights, on police reform, which are such important issues?
I think there's been some substantive conversation around some of the more quote-unquote progressive campaigns, such as Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. Even Pete Buttigieg has really expressed some understanding, some sensitivity, or some at least willingness, it appears, to push to a more of a reform agenda. So I think there has been that conversation in these campaigns.
Corinne, someone that hasn't gotten as much attention as Tom Steyer. On paper, he has a very pro-civil rights, pro-reform, pro-black agenda.
Yeah, he does.
Has it really broken through?
I don't quite know yet. We'll see, right? We'll see. I think this will be a good test. And he talks about reparations in a very, he puts it out there every time. We heard him talking about it on stage. I think one thing that we have to remember, if you think about criminal justice platform, just a couple of years ago, the Democratic Party was debating on who was the best on crime, right? The hardest on crime. And now we're in a place where people are fighting, trying to have the best criminal justice reform plan. And so I think that's some progress that we've seen just across the board on progressive issues, on issues that really affect the black community. And I think that says a lot about where we are in 2020.
Look, to the question about Tom Steyer, I think he's broken through in the sense that he hunkered down in the state. He spent money in the state, hired people in the state, and spent time getting his message through, which is why Tom Steyer is number 3 or number 4 in the polls, where someone like Mayor Pete, who's been in the race, in the presidential race a little longer, is down in single digits. But I do think in this last week, what we have seen is the resurgence of Vice President Biden. And through a number of factors, whether it was the new polls coming out showing that no, he's not down to single digits ahead of Bernie Sanders. He's double digits over Bernie Sanders. Then the debate performance in Charleston. Then the very emotional and heartfelt endorsement from Congressman Clyburn.
Right, which we were just talking about with the congressman. I have about 40 seconds left in this hour. From each of you, who has the most riding on tonight?
Yeah.
Biden clearly has the most riding on tonight.
Yeah, and Biden, and I think he's going to win, but the question is margin. What is the margin? How many delegates does he get from the state?
And I think it's going to be Biden, and he's going to have the wind at his back.
Yeah. And was Juvenile the right musician, or should it have been a DaBaby or a J. Cole?
I thought you were going to back that thing up today. I think that's what you tweeted. I saw a tweet about
Jonathan Capehart not feeling it.
What are y'all talking about? I'm a jazz guy.
I mean, it was on the stage with him, I think, as well at the time.
Well, that's more, if you're talking about that, if you're saying it's a family affair, that's more Sly and the family stuff.
Okay, now we're talking.
I love our guests. I love everyone who came out tonight. I'm told we're out of time. Mark, Kareem, Jonathan, thank you. Thanks for everyone at the Lizard's Ticket. And keep it locked right here for Joy Reid picking up our special coverage.
This President's Day, I do solemnly swear to faithfully overcome all weather, seek new heights, and exercise my right to go anywhere and do anything in the longest-lasting and best-selling 4x4 SUV brand. Take the oath of adventure at the Jeep President's Day event. Now get 0% APR financing plus $750 bonus cash on the 2020 Jeep Grand Cherokee.
The first word to any adventure. But when allergies and congestion strike, take Allegra D, a non-drowsy antihistamine plus a powerful decongestant. So you can always say yes to putting your true colors on display. Say yes to Allegra D.
Update your floors with Empire Today's $50 room sale. Buy one room, get floors for all other rooms for just $50 each. So when you buy one room, it's only $50 for laminate in the kitchen, $50 for carpet in the bedroom, and $50 for hardwood in the office. There's no limit. Buy one room and it's $50 for floors in each additional room. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today. You're the best player on the team. Why is that so hard for you to believe?
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today. You're the best player on the team. Why is that so hard for you to believe?
Don't underestimate the impact you can have on them.
Little things add up. Keep pressing. Taking charges. Third list. You got this, okay? No, just nod. I want to hear your voice. Yes or no? Yes, Coach.
Ben Affleck, The Way Back. Rated R. Only in theaters March 6th.
Something's happening across America.
Campaign that some said shouldn't be here at all has shown that we are here to stay.
A military veteran from the industrial Midwest, beating the most powerful politicians in America.
By growing an American majority that is united not only over who it is we're against, but in what it is that we are for. This is our only shot to beat Donald Trump.
Vote Vets is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Only in Jamaica can you stay at one Sandals and play around at all 6 resorts. Sandals in Jamaica. It's 6 vacations in one. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
Hi, we're Warby Parker, an eyewear company that offers high-quality glasses starting at $95, including prescription lenses. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com. Oh yeah, about those prescription lenses. Warby Parker glasses come standard with custom-cut polycarbonate lenses that have been treated with scratch-resistant and anti-reflective coatings. Nice. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
We tried 2 different real estate agents who both promised great results, but after almost a year on the market, we still hadn't sold our house. Then we found HomeLight, which promised to get us in touch with the top agents in our area. We went with the agent they recommended, and it worked. HomeLight's agent sold our house when the others couldn't.
HomeLight compares data on millions of agents, so you know you're getting the best agent for your needs.
Oh yeah, we recommend HomeLight.
Get started for free today at homelight.com.
MSNBC special coverage of the South Carolina primary. I'm Joy Reid, live from the city of Charleston. In just over 2 hours, polls close in the first southern state and one of the most diverse states to vote so far in the Democratic presidential primary. Notably, there is no Republican primary because the party canceled it, so Trump wouldn't have to face a contest. South Carolina is poised to be an early test of the Democrats' rapport with black voters, who are the core base whose support any Democrat will need to get the nomination. And it appears to be the first state where Joe Biden, in his third attempt to become the president of the United States and in his fourth primary this election season, might actually win. Biden got a boost this week with a key endorsement from South Carolina's own Jim Clyburn, the House Majority Whip and one of the most influential politicians in this state. Biden's support from black voters has helped keep him ahead in the Palmetto State, even as his primary performance has been underwhelming in the 3 prior states. So I should note Biden currently has the third most delegates among the tiny number doled out so far. But Bernie Sanders leads the count at 45. Pete Buttigieg is at second with 26. Biden has 15. Elizabeth Warren has 8. Amy Klobuchar has 7. Now, while Biden is staking his candidacy on a South Carolina rebound, Bernie Sanders held events in Massachusetts and Virginia today, with his eyes on Super Tuesday, 3 days from now. So the questions: does Sanders' momentum mean that even a Biden blowout in South Carolina is too late? Or could a big win for the former vice president change everything and slow Sanders down and turn Super Tuesday into a Biden-Bernie duel? So many questions. It's not every election cycle that a health crisis, meanwhile, makes the choice of who should lead this country more complicated and more important. But coronavirus is just such a crisis. Today, in a rare weekend news conference, the Trump administration confirmed the first U.S. death from coronavirus, a patient in Washington state. And Donald Trump, the same Donald Trump who just last night called the outbreak a hoax perpetrated by the Democrats and the media to make him look bad, he announced enhanced travel restrictions and advisories to some of the world's most affected regions while insisting that Americans have nothing to fear on his watch.
Country is prepared for any circumstance. We hope it's not going to be a major circumstance. It'll be a smaller circumstance, but whatever the circumstance is, we're prepared. And I'd like to just ask and caution that the media, we would respectfully ask the media and politicians and everybody else involved not do anything to incite a panic, because there's no reason to panic at all.
Joining with me to discuss all of this is Kathleen Sebelius, Health and Human Services Secretary under President Obama. And Secretary, let's start with, Secretary Sebelius, let's start with the state of affairs. The LA Times has a piece entitled "Lack of Accurate Coronavirus Tests Sets Back Effort to Limit Infections." So there are not enough tests available just to know whether or not people have the virus. Item 2 from Fortune: Trump administration budget cuts could become a major problem as coronavirus spreads. So we have a lack of tests. We have a lack of resources since the administration has cut the budget for health intervention. And one more piece from the Washington Post: coronavirus infected Americans flown home against the CDC's advice. The Centers for Disease Control said, do not fly this person home. The president insisted that they be allowed to do it. And now everyone who potentially traveled with that person, everyone who's come in contact with that person, is also at risk. As somebody who is in charge of the health services in this country, how big of a problem is all of this? How afraid or nervous should we be?
Well, Joy, I think you've just outlined 3 really critical problems. As you know, I kind of got a pandemic in my welcome wagon. In April of 2009, we had an emerging virus. It started in Mexico, so we were at the center of it. We did not have a vaccine. People were really panicking as the disease spread widely. What the President President Obama said over and over and over again, we are going to be led by the science. He made the scientists, made sure that they were front and center. We followed the CDC guidance. We told Americans on a regular basis what we knew, and more importantly, what we didn't know. I think that helped with the confidence level. We don't have enough test kits in the United States. That is a big gap, and hopefully CDC will be allowed to talk to us about how quickly we can fill that gap. But we've done fewer tests than most countries in the world. We also don't have updated test guidance. The original guidance was very restrictive about people who had traveled to areas of China. I understand there are new travel restrictions. So what about testing guidance? How broadly will we be testing as soon as we get kits? That's a part that the United States is really behind on, and we need to catch up very quickly. Then we really need to have President Trump and Vice President Pence stop talking about this situation, because they have called it a hoax. Mike Pence has very little public health credibility from his previous jobs, and let the scientists talk to the American public. That's the best way to instill confidence. They have the competence. We have very skilled people in Tony Fauci at NIH leading the vaccine development. We have people like Dr. Ann Schuchat at CDC, who has 30 years of experience all over the world. Let them talk to the American public and tell business owners, parents, the general public what they know and what realistically the timetables might be. There isn't a need to panic unless people don't trust the information they're getting. That causes a panic.
Well, I mean, one of the challenges that you just mentioned, Tony Fauci and others, are any of those people in government? I mean, you know, as we've been following the Trump administration, they've been shedding scientists, either driving them out of their jobs or just letting them go because they're not loyalist enough to the president. So we are short on actual scientists who work for the government, no?
Well, luckily, NIH has not been hollowed out, and Tony Fauci is still there leading the Infectious Disease Institute. So that's very good news for the American public. He's revered all over the world. He's right here. He's not going anywhere. But my understanding is he may have been told not to appear on Sunday talk shows, not been allowed to give information directly to the public. That's a big mistake. Ann Schuchat is still at CDC, but the budget pending right now that the president just put before Congress has a huge cut for the CDC budget. Terrible idea. If they're really serious about this, revise the budget immediately. Have Mick Mulvaney not talk to the conservative group and tell them to, spin a little good news. Go up to the Hill and say, we want to pull back the budget we gave you, and we want actually an increase in CDC funding. Nothing could be more important right now, and fill some of the positions that were put in the White House, pandemic response positions, scientific positions. See if people will come work with this government, at least as far as this virus is concerned, because you're absolutely right. There isn't anybody on the inside. I did hear that Vice President Pence or somebody asked Ambassador Debbie Birx to come in to that team, to the coronavirus team. Again, that's very good news. Right. She is a knowledgeable, experienced person, but they got to get out of the way. They have to get the politicians to stop talking and let the scientists talk to the public.
Yeah, and letting, turning it into a saying it's a hoax is going to mean that people who are adherents to Donald Trump, people who are fans of his, may resist getting tested, may ignore symptoms among people that they know, because he has told them, their president has told them it's fake. And I can't imagine a more irresponsible thing for a president to do than to say it's a hoax. This is a deadly potential illness.
You bet. And as we've seen, tragically, there is now one death. It won't be the last death, but we need to actually, be serious about this, be confident that we're getting the right information, not panic, but also follow the science. And you're absolutely right. It's like the anti-vaxxers telling people not to get their children vaccinated, which not only is harmful to those children, but potentially harmful to all their peers.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully somebody in right-wing media will change their mind and not convince people who are Donald Trump fans not to be tested and not to take it seriously. Take your own lives seriously. This is not a game. It's your health. It's your kids' health. It's the people around you, your neighbors. Anyway, that's my little public service announcement. Kathleen Sebelius, thank you very much. Really appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you. And we have some breaking news. The first exit polls are starting to come out of South Carolina, and our very own Steve Kornacki is standing by at the big board to unpack them for us. Hello, Steve.
Hey, Joy, that's right. Well, polls are still open for another couple hours in South Carolina, so what we can give you here, this is the initial wave of exit poll data. There's more that's going to come in. Obviously, 7 p.m. Eastern, we're going to start getting actual votes, but we are getting a sense of what this electorate looks like and what may be motivating this electorate in South Carolina. A couple things I can show you in this first wave of the exit poll. The first is this. This is the breakdown by age. Now, remember, we've talked about age as a major factor in this race, a major fault line in this Democratic race. In South Carolina, being a bit of an older electorate, you can see here, 72% in this exit poll, 72% are 45 and older, 28% are under 45. In 2016, in the South Carolina primary in 2016, this 45 and older number was 65. Now, sometimes what we see, I should note, in these exit polls is the initial wave will sometimes be a little bit older than the subsequent waves. So let's see if this 72% ticks down as the night goes on. But remember, the baseline here from 2016 was 65%. Our initial exit poll putting that over 45 number at 72%. Another interesting thing here is by race. What is we always say South Carolina, the first major test of black support. You can see initially here, 55% of this Democratic electorate in South Carolina is African American. The number in 2016, this was an all-time high in South Carolina. The number in 2016 was 61. So it's actually down a little bit in this initial wave. Again, let's see if that number goes up at all as more waves of exit poll data come in. But again, this is by far the largest black electorate in any of the states that have gone so far. It will probably be an outright majority of the electorate tonight. And one other number I can tell you, Joy, I don't believe we have the graphic, but this jumped out at me here. We don't have the graphic. I'm going to try to get it for you the next time. Anyway, that's what we've got initially.
That's what you call a tease, Steve Kornacki.
Yes.
That's what you call a tease. So we'll come back to you for the graphic. But let me ask you a question, because you, very quickly before I let you go, what you're looking at there, does that redound to the benefit of anyone in particular? A slightly less African-American and very much older electorate? Just off looking at the sort of polling that you look at every day, can you see any tea leaves out of that?
Well, I could just say in general, we have talked about here older voters. The fault line on age has been so pronounced in this race, at least so far, where older voters seem to be the most sort of hesitant to get on board with Bernie Sanders. Certainly Joe Biden and all of the polling in the early states has fared better with older voters. The base for Bernie Sanders has certainly been younger voters. That's what we've seen in the results so far as one of the reasons that coming into South Carolina, folks were talking about this in general as a state that was more favorable to Joe Biden than to Bernie Sanders, just the demographics of it. And again, we say it's 55% black in this exit poll as opposed to 61% 4 years ago. That is slightly down, but 55%, this is still one of the largest numbers you're going to see in any primary this year, any Democratic primary when it comes to the African-American vote.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the guy you want to talk to when it comes to anything elections. I just like watching you talk about this stuff.
We got plenty more to come here tonight. Don't worry.
I know. Well, I'm waiting for the tease. You've teased a big thing. I'm waiting for it for later. So we'll come back to you later. All right, Steve Kornacki, the big boy, we'll come back to him a little bit later. Coming up, Bernie Sanders is trying to win his third state in a row tonight in South Carolina. The national co-chair for his campaign will join me next.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins, consuming us with the need to thrive. It's just part of who we are.
Sleep this amazing? That's a ZQL Pure Z Sleep. Our gummies contain a unique botanical blend, while an optimal melatonin level means no next-day grogginess. ZQL Pure Z's, naturally superior sleep.
Yes, it's the first word of any new discovery. But when allergies attack, the excitement fades. Allegra helps you say yes with the fastest non-drowsy allergy relief and turn any half-hearted yes into an all-in yes. Allegra, live your life, not your allergies.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
The deadly coronavirus officially hitting the U.S.
The markets are plunging for a second straight day.
Health experts warn the U.S. is underprepared. Managing a crisis is what Mike Bloomberg does. In the aftermath of 9/11, he steadied and rebuilt America's largest city, oversaw emergency response to natural disasters, upgraded hospital preparedness to manage health crises, and he's funding cutting-edge research to contain epidemics. Tested, ready.
I'm Mike Bloomberg, and I approve this message.
I'm your 70-pound St. Bernard puppy, and my lack of impulse control is about to become your problem.
No, come on. I saw you eating poop earlier. Hey! My focus is on the road, and that's saving me cash with DriveWise. Who's the dummy now?
Forget Allstate. Where good drivers save 40% for avoiding mayhem, like me.
Sorry! He's a baby!
These folks, they don't have time to go to the post office. They have businesses to grow, customers to care for, lives to get home to. They use Stamps.com. Print discounted postage for any letter, any package, anytime, right from your computer. All the amazing services of the post office, only cheaper. Get our special TV offer, a 4-week trial plus postage and a digital scale. Go to Stamps.com/try and never go to the post office again.
At Credible.com, we've helped tens of thousands of people save money by refinancing their student loans. In 3 minutes, we'll get you actual rates from multiple lenders. We could save you hundreds of dollars a month.
Visit Credible.com to see how much you could save.
I got things I want to do, but student loans were holding me back. Credible.com helped me save $600 a month with a great rate. Now I can go do what I want to do.
Visit Credible.com to see how much you could save on your student loans.
I guess I want Bernie's fight in Biden.
You want Biden to fight like Bernie?
Yeah. I want Biden's policies or his electability, in my opinion.
Welcome back. Well, the polls are still open in South Carolina. If you haven't voted yet, get out there and vote. This is the real test for the candidates among black voters, or the vast majority of the electorate here, while the electorate in New Hampshire and Iowa is overwhelmingly white, and Nevada's black population is just over 10% of the total. The Democratic vote in South Carolina today is expected to be about 60% black. And joining me now is Nina Turner, national co-chair for the Bernie Sanders campaign, and the Reverend Al Sharpton, host of MSNBC's Politics Nation and president of the National Action Network. I am prepared to enjoy this panel because these are two friends. But I want to start with you, Rev, because you're the one person that I know that has run for president before. You're the only friend I have that ever ran for president. South Carolina is tricky because South Carolina is heavily black in terms of the electorate. It's heavily church, church voters. But the young voters and the older black voters split completely different ways. Younger black voters, when I was here in 2016, were very Bernie, and older voters were very Hillary. But in the end, it was the Hillary voters that actually turned up at the polls. So it's a tough race. It's a tough state to run in.
It's a tough state in terms of if you look at it as a monolith.
Right.
It is true that the black vote here is dominant. I think the exit polls have said that there are 55% of those that have voted early today have been black voters, and it probably will go to 60. The question is the age groups and where the preference is. But I think it is important that the party nominee, whoever that ends up being, understand you cannot win without the black vote coming out in big numbers in November. So it is important that you look at this temperature that comes out of South Carolina. The offense that people like me take, and we had a big breakfast here the other day, National Action Network, with all of the candidates, including Nina. Nina's not the candidate, but she has credibility with a lot of us across intergenerational lines, being intergenerational, is that you cannot act like South Carolina is a bump stop on your way to Super Tuesday.
Right.
You've got to respect the black vote. You've got to respect older and younger black voters, or you are not viable in November.
Yep.
That's why South Carolina is important. And a lot of people are saying we'll make a pit stop through South Carolina on our way to the big day. Well, this is a big day. If you can't do something here, win or lose, but bring your percentages up to prove you can win a black vote, you will not be a viable candidate.
And you know, I still remember coming down here, you know, our friend Killer Mike was in all the barbershops, walks into a barbershop, he walks out, everybody in the barbershop was like, love Bernie. But when it came to actual turnout, those voters were not being turned out. They actually, a lot of those voters actually didn't turn out. And then this year, you have this message that we also heard in 2016 that turned off a lot of older black voters in particular, this idea that, well, those voters in the South, those are the Southern, sort of writing off that vote as not being important because, well, South Carolina is not viable in November, so it's really not that important. That was sort of the vibe that a lot of people got from Sanders' world in 2016. How do you prevent voters from feeling, you know, sort of ignored or left behind or counted out, particularly since in November, there's going to be a hot Senate race here. So this is actually an important state for presidential.
With a black candidate also.
With a black candidate with Jamie Harris running. So it's going to matter.
I hope that nobody got that vibe. I know some people were concerned. Senator Sanders actually has been to over 60 events in the state just himself, and that's not counting people like me or Killer Mike or Mr. Danny Glover or Dr. Cornel West and Phil Agnew and others. He really sees the state as vitally important. It is not a bump stop onto anything else. He has really committed the time, either him directly or the time of others like me, to come into the state and really build relationship. He talks about South Carolina all the time. Even when he's not here, he will always ask me what is happening in South Carolina and really wish that he had had more time to really spend in this state.
So they played Whitney, who we had this really great focus group the other day. These young South Carolina voters, all under 30. Whitney, who was our one undecided voter, she was undecided between Biden and Bernie. So they seem like completely opposite. But what she couldn't decide, but she wanted somebody that had the fight of Bernie, but she liked the policies more of Biden, right? So you have a lot of people who are just not deciding until at the last minute. Talk about what is the sort of game plan for somebody who is an activist yourself? And activist campaigns make people nervous. If you're an activist, it makes people a little worried. The establishment world goes, whoa, I don't know about that. What message actually resonates with people who themselves may have been activists when they were young, or they may have thought about it, but when it comes to voting, they want to be pragmatic?
You have to be passionate, and you have to believe in something and have a consistent track record. And you have to be able to show you can govern.
Right.
And I think that if you can put that combination together, then it makes older voters comfortable and younger voters feel that you are really passionate and have the energy. And especially today, when we're seeing this coronavirus, people want someone that can manage, but at the same time have the passion for what they are concerned about: criminal justice, health care, education. These are real issues, and a lot of people feel that what has happened in the past in terms of those in charge has not worked, but they don't want to do it at the expense of all you know what to do is protest, that you need to have that balance. And I think that those that have been activist types in this campaign have tried to stress both, because no one wants to put someone in the Oval Office. I remember when President Obama was in, and we would meet all the time with him, I and other civil rights leaders, and he would say, that's y'all's job to advocate.
Right.
I've got to run this. I will hear the advocacy and do what I think is right. And I think that's the kind of synergy we need in the Democratic candidate.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, Nina, just anecdotally talking to people, this whole coronavirus situation is freaking people out a little bit. And people should be concerned about it. But in a campaign that's putting a complete redo of the healthcare plan as the primary sort of product for sale in the Sanders campaign, they're saying we're going to redo the healthcare system. Is there a concern in the campaign that is going to maybe turn people the other way? There are a lot of people who are giving a second look to Michael Bloomberg because they're saying they may not be so fond of his criminal justice policies, but he managed the city, the second mayor after 9/11, that, somebody that's more of a pragmatic manager, somebody who's done that kind of thing, rather than somebody who wants to tear up the health system. A lot of people are saying, whoa, let me rethink Bernie.
Well, I want people to see it not as tearing down the healthcare system, but enhancing that healthcare system. I think this virus is a perfect example as to why we do need Medicare for all. Because, for example, we don't want want anybody not to go after, not to go get checked out, and they think they have something or they're sick just because they cannot afford their health care. So this is really an enhancement. And let us not forget, we have Medicare right now, and it's for 65 years and older. And I dare anybody to try to take Medicare away from our elders in this country. That program works, and what this program will do is just enhance it to all ages, so they should not fear that. Also, with President Bernard Sanders, he will listen to the experts. You know, he will support the CDC and the other scientists and what is necessary. I think what really comes into focus as we deal with this as not only a nation, as a world, is what the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said when he said, what affects one directly affects us all indirectly.
100%. And you know, I've been thinking about the fact that you think about this is a president that's caging immigrants, migrants. We don't know how many he still has. We don't know if there are those who are still. Are they getting tested for the flu?
That's right.
You know, this is a situation where the policies of the president are you must just laud him and support him or you're out. That means scientists out, experts gone. So it's not clear the expertise remains there. And then he turns around and calls coronavirus a hoax.
A hoax.
This is really
Well, any one of the Democratic candidates would be better than a president that calls something that is an impending problem all over the world and now has come to these shores, one death today, and certainly we pray for that family, but that calls it a hoax. So any of the Democratic candidates would be better than that in the sense that they would recognize a problem and get a team together to try and deal with the problem. But here we have a president with this situation who comes and has a rally last night, spends the time ridiculing everybody, ridiculing the Democrats, when he should be trying to unite the country to deal with could be, we hope it will not be a situation that could be something that all of our fears end up being in any way, in any measure, to be justified. Hopefully it will not be that way. But as I'm walking around today, South Carolina, people are saying to me that I know a Republican. They said it. Reverend, pray for us. What's going to happen? And they don't even get the comfort from their own president.
Absolutely. And are being made either not to pay attention to it, his voters, which is actually dangerous to his own supporters, or being told that it's more about politics and about public health. I want to say, on this question of unity,
Joy, please. We need more than an expert troll in this moment. And that really is what he is an expert troll. He has been following, you know, the Democratic primary everywhere that primary has happened. Like a little kid. And so we do need some real leadership at this time when this nation is hurting. And also we need the leader of the free world to be a leader that brings other world leaders together to really deal with this.
He doesn't have those relationships.
No,
he
burned up.
Friends with
That's
Kim Jong-un and the Saudi prince. And of course the Russian president, who's his, I guess, best friend. So I want to ask you just on the question of bringing the country together, because Senator Sanders, if he became president, that would be his job, bring people together. And one of the challenges, and it's a repeated challenge, I've talked to other members of the campaign about this, is whether or not Sanders is able to translate from being a revolutionary to somebody who brings people together. There's been a lot of the vibe of the campaign that's been, you know, a lot of reporters are like, they sort of mildly don't talk too much about Sanders because you just get the blowback is just so ferocious. And I understand why there's a lot of anger out there, and the anger comes from a real place. But does the senator have the capability of getting bigger than that and starting to be inclusive? Because there are a lot of people who voted for Hillary Clinton who don't see themselves as the enemy or the establishment. They're just Democrats. And they would be involved, but they feel pushed out and they feel repelled.
I mean, all are welcome. I always go back to 2008, Joy, and I know Rev remembers this, is that more of Secretary Clinton's, or 25% of her support, absolutely did not support President or then Senator Obama. More of Senator Sanders supporters actually supported her in 2016. But let me get to your bigger point. Yes, he can. In the same way that in this tense political environment, Senator Sanders was able to bring together a Senate to vote for the Yemen, resolution to try to stop President Trump from going overboard in that war. In the same way that he is labeled as the Amendment King, in the same way that he was able for veterans to cross the aisle and be able to work with them then, our late Senator John McCain. Senator Sanders does have the ability to be bigger than that. And if you notice how Senator Sanders campaigns, I'm talking about him, the man, not supporters, he always stays on the issues. He does not, he stays there. And he always talks about people being his friend. And in many ways, he actually does believe that. He is just somebody that is a true public servant and wants to see the poor in this country, the working poor and the barely middle class really have the body politic shift their way. And he feels it in his
he's
heart.
lucky to have you to speak for him. I know I'm being told that we have to go, but I know that you know him, and not that I would have you divulge any conversations, but do you think that we might get to a point where former President Obama might have to step into this primary and help to bring all of the factions together?
I think that President Obama will do at the right time what is right for the country. And I think that my prediction, I've not talked to him about it, is that he probably will not get involved in the primary fights, but he will be very involved in trying to bring the country together once the party, the Democratic Party, makes its decision. But I'm sure he's watching and concerned, particularly now that we're dealing with what could be a crisis.
Absolutely. The Reverend Al Sharpton, Nina Turner, two of the best out there. Everybody should have said the two of you all speak for everybody. Everybody would be a lot happier and better off. I thank you guys very much. We're about 90 minutes away from the polls closing here in South Carolina. Be sure to stick around with MSNBC throughout the evening for extensive coverage of this very important primary. Coming up next, as 2020 Democrats look ahead to Super Tuesday, there will be a new dynamic at play in those states. Michael Bloomberg is on the ballot. Here we go. We'll be right back.
As a caricature artist, I appreciate what makes each person unique. That's why I like Liberty Mutual. They get that no two people are alike. And customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. Almost done? What do you think?
Don't see it. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
The better question would be, where do I not listen to it?
While I'm eating my breakfast.
On the edges of cliffs.
On a ski lift.
Everywhere.
Download Audible and start listening today.
Have you ever wondered what the motorcade driver drives when they're not in a motorcade? This one drives a Volkswagen Passat.
Want your brain better? Unlike ordinary memory supplements, Nariva has clinically proven ingredients that fuel 5 indicators of brain performance: memory, focus, accuracy, learning, and concentration. Try Nariva for 30 days and see the difference.
I am totally blind. And Non-24 can make me show up too early or too late, or make me feel like I'm not really there. Talk to your doctor and call 844-234-2424.
Fact, we all love video doorbells. Voice assistants have changed our lives. We now control our home with a touch. Indoor and outdoor cameras help us keep watch. We want to guard our digital lives and hold tight to our loved ones everywhere. And you know what's better than all these things by themselves? All these things together from the most trusted name in security, ADT.
Jessie's on her way. She just braved a career change, and now she needs the right ride and she needs to save money. So she came here, filtered by make and model, and was able to get a great price. TrueCar. Buy smarter, drive happier.
When it's time to sell your home, there's a lot of money on the line. How can you trust your real estate agent will get it right? There's good news. With HomeLight, you can compare actual performance data on thousands of agents near you, so you know who sells quickly, who sells for the best price. We'll match you with the perfect agent for your needs. And best of all, it's free. Sell your home for more money. Go to HomeLight.com today.
Eating better is easy when everything is done for you. Meet Freshly, chef-cooked meals ready in minutes. Choose from a weekly menu crafted by our chefs and nutritionists and we'll deliver fresh to your door. So skip the meal prep, cooking and cleaning, and start eating healthy without the hassle. To order your chef-cooked meals, go to freshly.com today.
Hey everybody, I'm Joy Reid. You are watching MSNBC coverage of the South Carolina primary, where people are casting their votes in the Democratic primary even as we speak. And the polls are set to close in just about 85 minutes. It's a must-win for former Vice President Joe Biden, who has yet to win a state in the 2020 primary season. Make sure you stick with us throughout the evening for our special coverage led by my colleagues Brian Williams and Rachel Maddow. You do not want to miss it. We'll be right back.
Oh, this is nice. Your house is almost on fire.
I think I found your wallet.
This was on your driveway.
Got coming mail.
We're here to make sure you're okay.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
All right, thank you, my brother. I appreciate you. Yes!
Yes? Yes? Yes, sure. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, no problem.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, 1,000 times yes.
Discover. Accepted at over 95% of places in the U.S.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins, consuming us with a need to thrive. It's just part of who we are.
You try to stay ahead of the mess, but scrubbing still takes time. Now there's new Dawn Power Wash Dish Spray. It's the faster way to clean as you go. Just spray, wipe, and rinse. It cleans grease 5 times faster. New Dawn Power Wash. Spray, wipe, rinse.
This is Darling & Co., a small family-run business on Amazon. In 4 years, they've launched over 40 products, from skincare to affirmation cards. These are their beta testers.
Having a business on Amazon, it's given us the freedom to be with our children. I want to empower our kids and others that look like them.
More than half of everything sold on Amazon comes from small and medium-sized businesses like Darling & Co., and you can find them on Amazon.
This, allergy sufferers, is my favorite Zysol bedtime story. It's about the time when allergy symptoms ruined people's sleep and made them miserable all the next day. Oh, what relief they found taking Zysol at night. It worked while they slept and they woke refreshed for more productive days ahead. Zysol provides powerful relief. Plus, it lasts up to 6 times longer than Benadryl, works faster than Claritin, and on first dose provides the same relief as Zyrtec in a pill nearly half the size. So, be wise all, take Zysol. At night.
Shop the polished casual event at Men's Warehouse for versatile looks at smart prices. Sport coats start at $139.99 and designer suits are 60% off. Plus dress or casual pants and casual shirts are 2 for $80. Only at Men's Warehouse.
When was the last time you did something for the first time? Discovered water that was 20 shades of blue. Where a butler served you cocktails on a beach. Ever dined in Paris one night and in India the next? Or the last time you felt like this? Sandals Resorts. With everything included, there's a first time for everything. Call 1-800-SANDALS.
Well, it's not going to give them back. We're going to be out of here.
In just over an hour, the polls here in South Carolina will close. And before winners even declared, the candidates are already on the move. And looking ahead to Super Tuesday, when voters in 15 states and territories will weigh in, 1,344 delegates are up for grabs. It will be the first test for Michael Bloomberg, who isn't on the ballot here in South Carolina. Back with me, Reverend Al Sharpton, host of Politics Nation, Adrian Elrod, former Hillary Clinton senior advisor, and Charlie Pierce, writer-at-large for Esquire. All right, everyone, we are all here real cold. I don't know if people can tell that we are shivering internally, but let's talk about what we think is going to happen. I'll start with you, Charlie. What are you hearing as you walk around?
I think Biden wins fairly big. I think Biden gets the win he needs to have the next 3 days story be Biden bounce back, because you know there are a couple of hundred people in our business and in the political establishment are very thirsty for Joe Biden to show any sign of life.
And so we understand that in a lot of ways Bloomberg et al., but mostly Bloomberg, are sort of saved, or candidates that came around or came into the race because of a worry that Biden wasn't strong enough.
Right.
And so what you're saying is that if he shows here that he has some strength, does that then hurt somebody like a Bloomberg?
I don't know whether you carry it forward at all. This is what we talked about. I think you and I talked about this on another show. This is the William Goldman election. Nobody knows anything. I mean, Joe Biden could win by 20 points tonight and then not get a delegate next Tuesday in California. So what does that mean about his campaign?
What does it mean?
I have no idea.
Let's look at this poll, which I was asking in the break whether or not people really believed it. This is a Monmouth poll. It's a really small sample in the 454 likely Democratic voters. It's a 4.6% margin of error. I'm always a little dubious when there's a big margin of error and a small number of respondents. But Adrienne, as somebody who's been in the business, you see a poll like that, you're Biden, do you feel comfortable and bounce out and head out to California or Texas?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think we've seen a number of polls over the last few days. I mean, I agree with you completely. Is that poll, is it a proper poll? I don't know. It seems like it may not be.
Yeah.
But we've seen a number of polls that have showed a very forward trajectory for Joe Biden in South Carolina over the last few days. And, you know, Joy, what I think this means for him, too, is if he has a decisive victory here tonight in South Carolina, a lot of voters in Super Tuesday states remain undecided.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many friends of mine that I've talked to in Super Tuesday states saying, I'm looking to South Carolina to tell me what to do, who to vote for. So if Joe Biden does well here tonight, which I think he will, this could be the emergence he needs from that moderate pack, including Bloomberg, to really excel forward and be that leader that can sort of consolidate the moderate voters around
and
him.
I wonder, and if the producers could, I don't know if you guys can get it, but there was we used in our last block, or we didn't use this Bloomberg ad. If you guys can get it, if you can't, it's okay. But I'm just going to talk to Ray about this as a New Yorker, a fellow New Yorker. One of the anecdotal things that I've seen is that the coronavirus situation has sobered a lot of people up. A lot of people who maybe were curious about maybe going to a sort of more outre kind of candidate, maybe going for maybe an activist, maybe a Bernie Sanders, are thinking, you know what, maybe what we need is like somebody like Michael Bloomberg. And he's got an ad out basically taking advantage of the fact that as a former big city mayor, the biggest city mayor you could be, New York City, he can say, look, I know how to handle a big crisis like this.
No, I've seen the ad, and the advantage of having a lot of money is you can put ads out right away.
Yep.
And the ad, he says, not only was I the mayor of a big city, but I helped bring the city back after 9/11 in the middle of a crisis. So the ad in and of itself is effective. Now, many of us in New York have various views of Michael Bloomberg, but I think it is effective. But I think that is going to continue if this continues to escalate. And the reason is the contrast of a president saying it was a hoax, who not only didn't show how to manage it, he didn't even know how to diagnose the fact that we were dealing with a real situation. I think the message, though, that can come out of here for Joe Biden, and I'm not endorsing anyone here, is that he goes to Super Tuesday with the argument, I can win black voters, and I was defeated in white states, and we need a presidential candidate that can bring whites and blacks out, and that I'm the one that has proven that. If those polls hold up, he has that kind of argument that everyone else will have to argue against, because you have to remember, even in Nevada, Bernie Sanders lost the black vote.
That's true. That's true. He had a strong Latino vote turnout, but not as much with African American. Okay, we have that ad. Our super producers have done it. Let's watch the ad.
Good evening. I know this has been a very worrisome week for many Americans. The coronavirus is spreading and the economy is taking a hit. Markets have fallen because of uncertainty. At times like this, it's the job of the president to reassure the public.
Markets have fallen. People are worried. He stands up there like a faux president with the flag behind him and basically gives the message of sort of calm and competency that's the complete opposite of Donald Trump doing his like clowny act at a rally saying, oh, it's not even real, CNN made it up, it's fake news. I mean, that is a pretty big contrast that helps that guy.
See, I'm not entirely sure I agree with that. I think he sounds like a combination of Scrooge McDuck and Mr. Rogers in that ad. You know,
don't put Mr. Rogers down like that.
I'm not put, hey, I would never put Mr. Rogers down. But I think people now look at him as kind of like a rich guy, the image of a rich guy trying to buy the nomination is stuck to his forehead.
Well, look at him. Like, I mean, that's what he is, right? I mean, he's a rich guy.
Well, I mean, supposedly he hasn't bought any ad time after Super Tuesday.
Right. I mean, the other issue is that it could be that there's a weird way that all of this just winds up helping Biden, because Biden in the beginning was the front runner. Mm-hmm. The idea of Bernie Sanders winning 3 in a row freaked out a lot of sort of establishment-type Democrats. If Biden seems viable now, suddenly he's more than viable.
Yeah, and I think the coronavirus and the concerns that millions of Americans have about the way Donald Trump has been handling the situation and how he will handle it going forward only helps Joe Biden. Why? Because Joe Biden was vice president of the United States when President Obama was overseeing the Ebola crisis. Right. And people remember that, and they felt safe. They had a task force. They had a plan. Of course, Ron Klain, who is on Vice President Biden's campaign, was running the task force. Yep. So people feel very comfortable here. Something else, though, that I think Mike Bloomberg's doing that is very smart is I just saw that he purchased 3 minutes of airtime on major networks to sort of give his own presidential address, if you will, to address the coronavirus. I mean, people are capitalizing on this because they are seeing Trump not handle it well, and they're looking at his numbers start to decline among, maybe not his base, but among independents who are very concerned about President Trump sitting in that White House while this epidemic, happens.
Absolutely. And we should not forget that there are other candidates in the race. We'll see what happens with Mayor Buttigieg tonight, Elizabeth Warren tonight, Amy Klobuchar tonight, and Tom Steyer, who spent a lot of money here. He better do well out of the money that he spent. So we will keep an eye on all of it. Reverend Al Sharpton and Charlie Pierce, thank you. Adrienne is going to come back with me just a little bit. She's actually going to stay right after the break. We're going to try to warm up over the break. We're just over an hour away from the polls closing here in the Palmetto State. Stay with us for all things South Carolina primary. And coming up, we will make some bold predictions about tonight's primary in the Palmetto State. Stick around.
Hot. No, there's no space there. Maybe you were here? Oven mitts. Oven mitts. Everything's stuck in the drawers. I'm sorry. Oh, geez.
Hi.
Kelly Clarkson.
Try Wayfair.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's gonna help you with all of this. Yeah, here you go.
Thank you.
Oh, I like that one. That's a lot of storage.
Perfect.
You're welcome.
I love it. How did you do all this?
Wayfair. Speaking of dinner, what are we eating, guys?
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins, consuming us with a need to thrive.
It's just part of who we are.
And they found themselves in a magical land.
And then what happened? Where's our family from?
Was he my age?
So Nan and Pops eloped?
And then what happened, Daddy?
Well, before us, there were your great-great-great-grandparents.
Turn questions you've always had into stories you can't wait to share with Ancestry. Skin Sin number 17. Too many after parties. New Neutrogena Bright Boost with dullness-fighting neoglucosamine. Boost cell turnover by 10 times for instantly brighter skin. Bright Boost, Neutrogena.
Hey, no, I'm driving Dad to the hospital. He was just playing with Emma and he hit his head, but then he wouldn't stop bleeding and he got dizzy. Right, the blood thinner for AFib. How you doing, Dad?
I'll be okay.
Listen, we're pulling in. I'm gonna call you back. This is the 3rd time he's been admitted with a serious bleed. Is this blood thinner really helping him?
I understand your concern. Your father's atrial fibrillation increases his risk for stroke. This is why you're on warfarin. But there is an alternative.
Another pill?
No, it's called Watchman. Watchman is a permanent implant that reduces the risk of stroke.
In a clinical trial, 9 out of 10 people who received Watchman stopped taking warfarin in 45 days. There are risks associated with the Watchman implant, including internal bleeding, stroke, and in rare cases, it can be fatal. Talk to your cardiologist so that you thoroughly understand all the benefits and risks to see if Watchman is right for you.
Learn more at watchman.com.
Hi, we're Warby Parker, an eyewear company that offers high-quality glasses starting at $95, including prescription lenses. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
Oh yeah, about those prescription lenses.
Warby Parker glasses come standard with custom-cut polycarbonate lenses that have been treated with scratch-resistant and anti-reflective coatings. Nice. Try 5 pairs for free at warbyparker.com.
I finally got to start my career, except that I was spending thousands of dollars on interest on my student loans and I needed to refinance. And then I found Credible.com. Within just a few minutes, I had actual rates from lots of lenders. Now I'm saving thousands of dollars and I'll be out of debt much sooner. And I can focus on my future. It was so easy, I wish I had done it years ago.
Visit Credible.com to see how much you could save on your student loans.
Right now, we are about 70 minutes away from polls closing right here in South Carolina. Coming up at the top of the hour, 6 p.m. Eastern, MSNBC will have special live coverage of the primary, led by Brian Williams, Rachel Maddow, and Nicole Wallace. Stay with us for all of that. And with that, now it's time to make some primary predictions. We're going to put Adrienne Elrod, Democratic strategist, on the spot, Jamie Lovegrove, the Columbia Post and Courier political reporter, and Anton Gunn, a former South Carolina state representative. I'm mad at Anton because he's inside. He's author of the book, The Presidential Principles. I'm going to sell his book first. Put it up. Let's show it. Now we're going to you, inside man. Who's going to win tonight? And by how much? Interesting dance moves for his campaign, but he's been doing a lot and spending a lot.
No, he has. He's invested a ton of money, but he's also invested a ton of time. And for a while, he really had South Carolina to himself because everyone else was focused on Iowa and New Hampshire. Yeah. He put it all on the line here, and for a while, that was really working. The problem for him over the last week of this race has been that everyone else came, and suddenly voters had other options, and they remembered. A lot of voters I talked to who were between Steyer and Biden said this last week really reminded them what they liked about Biden to begin with, and a lot of them came home to him. I think he's going to, it seems like he's probably going to have a pretty strong night at this point, all the reports I'm hearing on the ground. I think Bernie is probably going to come in a pretty strong second, and then Steyer in third, and maybe somewhere around Pete as well.
Elizabeth Warren has been, I've been hearing her talk a lot. Where does she wind up?
She's been working incredibly hard, and some of her surrogates have been all over the state, particularly surrogates who can connect a lot better with some of the core demographics in South Carolina, black women for these activists who have been all over the state. It's tough because of, you know, the narrative has kind of, she lost control of the narrative a little bit, I think, over the last few weeks. But, you know, I think if they can get that final push at the end, she could end up, ideally for her, I think the top 4 would be a strong performance.
Yeah, and let's talk about the thing that no candidate wants to hear about, but we have to start talking about it. After tonight, is there anybody who realistically, you know, they got to look at it and start to say, this might not be for me. I might not be the one this year.
Yeah, I mean, Joy, if you are somebody who is consistently not hitting that threshold, not hitting 15% that you have to get in every state in order to qualify for delegates, I do think that you have to start looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, why am I in this race? What am I doing, you know, at this point in the race? Because again, I feel like I sound like a broken record talking about this, but you are, short of Bernie Sanders, you are essentially taking away from the Bernie Sanders alternative if you are hitting under 15%.
Do you feel like that, you know, because Biden seemed weak to people, but then if tonight he seems strong, if people are coming home to him, what does that do to a Pete Buttigieg who has delegates? What does that do to an Amy Klobuchar who has delegates? They can make the argument, I've got delegates, even if I didn't get any here.
Well, and to your point, I mean, that's exactly right. You know, the alternative standpoint here.
And Warren, too, same thing.
And Warren, too, exactly. If you are Amy Klobuchar, Pete Buttigieg, Elizabeth Warren, you still don't really have a real compelling reason to get out of the race because, first of all, when you have these strong debate performances, these big moments, you can raise $5-6 million in a debate, which keeps your campaign going. So, you know, right now there's a compelling reason for all these guys to get out, but there's also not a compelling reason for all of them to get out.
Yeah, and Anton, you know, looking at Super Tuesday, you only have, let's say, a few $1 million. Where do you spend it? Or 15
I don't know where you spend it with all of those states. Yeah, I just don't think you can do it in all of those states at the same time. You got to find one place to invest in. But here's the story that we're not talking about, is the early vote and the absentee voters who've already cast their ballots. Did they make their decision after Iowa and New Hampshire before Biden turned himself around? Because I'm seeing in South Carolina, so that could change the narrative. And that speaks to the candidate that is most organized to get their voters out.
Yeah, can you put that map back up, folks? Put that map back up. Where do you spend that money? Because you have a limited amount of money. California's expensive. Texas is expensive. You got to figure those southern states. If Biden wins big here, he might rack up all the southern states. Where do you spend it?
He may. I think that's what you're seeing Joe Biden do. I mean, he is going into some of these southern states and spending more money where you can get more bang out of your buck for what you're spending. But I mean, that is still the challenge, right? Because Mike Bloomberg is flooding the zone with so much money. And this is where a really talented campaign staff who knows how to effectively spend limited resources comes in handy.
Based on your reporting, if Bloomberg had been on the ballot here, how would he have done?
He might have made an impact. I think to some degree, Tom Steyer served as sort of a proxy for Mike Bloomberg because of that sort of spending strategy. You know, particularly if you go to areas on the border of South Carolina, on the border of North Carolina, border of Georgia, they've been seeing all those Bloomberg ads, and there have been voters I've talked to who said, I was interested in voting for Mike Bloomberg. Some of them didn't realize he wasn't on the ballot.
That's right.
They may have gotten surprised today when they showed up.
When they showed up, they had to vote for a different billionaire. Adrienne Elrod, Jamie Lovegrove, Anton Gunn. Here in Columbia, it's a little bit cold, but we made it. That does it for me this hour. Thank you guys for watching. Really appreciate you guys being here. You can catch me back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern for a brand new AM Joy, live from Selma, Alabama. Live from Selma, and after the break, Brian Williams, Rachel Maddow, Nicole Wallace. They're going to pick up our special network coverage of the South Carolina primary. Go get yourself something to drink that's nice and hot. We'll see you there. Take care.
We got a Subaru to give him some adventure. To reconnect and be together. And once we did that, we realized his greatest adventure is just beginning.
Welcome to the most adventurous Outback ever. The all-new Subaru Outback. Go where love takes you.
I was so embarrassed about paying too much for a used car, I went into hiding in this undisclosed location.
Only Carfax.com can give you the most accurate price based on the Carfax report. Stop the shame of overpaying and start your used car search today at Carfax.com.
Update your floors with Empire Today's $50 room sale. Buy one room, get floors for all other rooms for just $50 each. So when you buy one room, it's only $50 for laminate in the kitchen, $50 for carpet in the bedroom, and $50 for hardwood in the office. There's no limit. Buy one room, and it's $50 for floors in each additional room. Schedule now.
800-588-2300 Empire.
Today.
At today's Best Western, stay 2 nights and get a free night for your next stay. 1 night, 2 nights, free night. Book now at bestwestern.com.
As a caricature artist, I appreciate what makes each person unique. That's why I like Liberty Mutual. They get that no two people are alike. And customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. Almost done? What do you think?
I don't see it. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Want your brain better? Unlike ordinary memory supplements, Nariva has clinically proven ingredients that fuel 5 indicators of brain performance: memory, focus, accuracy, learning, and concentration. Try Nariva for 30 days and see the difference.
Day 1, 50 Peloton rides to start the year. Here we go. Halfway there, just hit a 5-day streak.
We did not wake up to be mediocre today, Peloton.
It's just another meeting.
Come on, you didn't wake up to be mediocre.
It's the last big test before Super Tuesday. Will Joe Biden hang on to his firewall? We'll be on the ground and at the big board, breaking down the results of the South Carolina primary. Tonight at 6 on MSNBC.
MSNBC.
The South Carolina primary.
We're going to win in South Carolina.
South Carolina, I'm asking for your support.
I am here in South Carolina to fight.
The world is watching South Carolina.
We are tired of billionaires buying elections.
The first in the South, the last before Super Tuesday.
We are going to surprise them.
With Sanders surging nationally, will Biden's firewall hold? Leading our coverage, Rachel Maddow, Brian Williams, Nicole Wallace, Steve Kornacki at the big board. Our political team fanned out across the Palmetto State. The Road Warriors tracking the candidates. Plus, Joy Reid, former Senator Claire McCaskill, former Obama campaign manager David Plouffe, former White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs, South Carolina native Eugene Robinson. MSNBC's special coverage starts now.
Exactly 1 hour to go until polls close across South Carolina, the first southern state to vote, the first state where the majority of the voters will be African American today and tonight. Today's vote just 3 days from Super Tuesday, meaning the outcome here tonight has the potential to scramble the leaderboard in this race.
South Carolina, of course, is unique among early voting states. Not only is it first in the South, but the electorate here tends to be older and ideologically more moderate, and Democratic voter turnout in South Carolina tends to skew even more female than the 3 other states that have gone so far. South Carolina Democrats also have a history of picking the eventual nominee. Barack Obama beat Hillary Clinton in South Carolina in 2008 by almost 30 points. Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders here in 2016 by almost 50 points. Tonight, Senator Sanders comes into this race as the frontrunner nationally, but not the frontrunner in South Carolina. South Carolina polls showing Vice President Joe Biden in the lead.
Biden was leading in South Carolina before he got the emotional endorsement from Congressman Jim Clyburn, arguably the most influential single Democrat in the state. The calendar here matters. More than 1,300 delegates are up for grabs on Super Tuesday, just days away, of course. Because of the timing, an upset here tonight or a runaway victory will be top of mind for voters in 14 states, those who haven't voted yet, as they go to the polls on Tuesday. We are watching the vote in South Carolina as we cover the other breaking news today, of course, and that was the word of the first U.S. death from coronavirus. We'll be talking to an outbreak responder here shortly, but with less than an hour to go in South Carolina. We'd like to begin with Steve Kornacki at the big board with our first look at the exit polling tonight, what voters are telling us. Hey, Steve.
Hey, Brian. Yeah, we are getting a sense of what this electorate looks like in South Carolina. You set it up there, different than what we've seen so far. Let me show you a couple of key ways that we're seeing in the exit poll. That was the wrong button. I'm off to a great start here. Let me show you a couple key differences, though. Number one here is the question of ideology. You guys just mentioned this, but 49% in our exit poll, 49% of Democratic primary participants today call themselves moderate or conservative. To give you some perspective on that, last week at this time when we were talking about that Sanders landslide in Nevada, this same number out there was just 34. So you've jumped up from 34 moderate conservative last week to basically half the electorate here in South Carolina. That is a significant change. There is also here we talk about the question of the first major test of support for black voters. 55% of the electorate in this exit poll is African American, an outright majority. This number is actually a little bit less than we saw in 2016. 2016, it was 61%, an all-time high. These exit poll numbers could change as we get more data, but still, outright majority African American electorate, one of the largest numbers we're going to see in all the Democratic primaries this year. And then there was this number, all the attention this week that was paid to the endorsement of Jim Clyburn, the veteran congressman from the state of Joe Biden. Here's the question. How important was the endorsement of Jim Clyburn to you? 47% of primary participants in this exit poll say the Clyburn endorsement was an important factor in their decision in this race.
Yeah, it may turn out to be a critical indicator for later. We just don't know yet. Chris Jansing is at the Charleston Charter School in the downtown part of the city tonight. And Chris, should we take anything from the fact that we don't see crowds of voters behind you?
You should take absolutely nothing from that. These ladies are winding down a little after what's been a busy day. This is Jim Clyburn's district, and the numbers are big, Brian. In 2016, 637 people voted at this location, 2 precincts. So far today, 888. I just got off the phone with 2 Democratic Party insiders. One of them has been tracking the vote here in Charleston County. I asked him to describe it to me. He said massive. He said in his precinct, which is in suburban Charleston, by 10:30, they had nearly matched the number for the entire day 4 years ago. And being led, he said, just what you heard from Steve Kornacki, by many of those conservative and moderate voters. He said white voters, exactly the same group of people who turned the neighboring district over to a Democrat, Joe Cunningham, 2 years ago. What these insiders and analysts take away from this is that they're looking at a movement similar to what they saw in 2018. They say heavily an anti-Trump vote. Now, we have talked to voters here. They're a little bit all over the board. They voted for any number of different candidates, but they all said exactly the same thing, Brian, that they will vote for whoever the Democratic nominee is. Again, reinforcing what we're hearing from the experts I just talked to, that this is an anti-Trump vote. One said, if the tree here is on the ballot, I will vote for a tree. One more comment from one of these guys who said to me, listen, we are sending a message. This is a fight for the soul of the Democratic Party, and the message to the Super Tuesday states from South Carolina is it's going to take a moderate to beat Donald Trump. Brian?
Let's point out, for fairness, a tree is their state symbol, so it wouldn't be that unusual. Chris Jansing, thank you. Let's go up to your north and west. Tremaine Lee is at a polling place up in Orangeburg, South Carolina, home to 2 HBCUs, an area where Joe Biden is counting on African-American vote turnout today. Hey, Tremaine.
Hey, Brian, I'll tell you what, I've been in South Carolina the entire week, going from Charleston, where I talked to black professionals about their undecided choices. I went to the rural counties and talked to black voters who feel left out and abandoned. But here I'm in Orangeburg, where Hillary Clinton beat Bernie Sanders big. And I know my colleagues are out there in South Carolina, but I have the absolute best polling station here. We are SC State. It's homecoming. And I want to tell you this. I spoke to Ariana and Jaslyn. These 2 students, they voted. All right, it's a big day. Tell me who you voted for and why.
I voted for Joe Biden. I just think that he's a candidate who is moderate enough to appeal to everyone, and he's got experience and a good track record.
Yeah, I voted for Joe Biden as well, only because I feel like he has a very advantage with working with Obama in the past. So I feel like if he has that same mindset, I think we'll be in a great place.
There are so many people who said, you know what, in South Carolina, the young folks are skewing more progressive, the older folks are going Biden. Do you feel any discomfort in your position at all?
No, I don't think I feel any discomfort. Like I said before, he's got a good track record, and they say go with what you know. So.
Now, when you talk about your parents, your grandparents, people in your family, who are they voting for and why?
They voted for Joe Biden as well, only because when it's working with Obama put us in a very great place, and he has a lot of strategies for us to be strong-minded and help us to get very benefits that we needed. So with Joe Biden being in office, I feel like the main thing that we're more focused on, that he's going to get Trump out of office so he can put America where it needs to be.
There are a lot of politicians on the Democratic side that were hoping for some excitement, some energy. When you talk to your friends and your family and your colleagues here in school, are they excited about today in 2020?
I think the excitement is coming from basically getting Donald Trump out of office. So I'm going to go with I think they're pretty excited.
I definitely agree with her. If Trump is out of office, I think everybody's going to start getting together and work hard so you know what we're working for.
If you know anything about an HBCU, they get busy. Clearly you hear the band, you see the dancers here, and it's excitement. And again, the black vote is no monolith. Black voters across the country have expressed themselves in so many different ways. And it's amazing that we're finally here on primary day. Back to you guys.
Tremaine, thank you. Thank you to your guests. Great reveal.
I was just going to say, how did we get Tremaine? How did we get somebody who can just do that hit from the polling place, telling what's going on, and then be like, and by the way, as I come around this corner, here's a live basketball game for you.
The pivot. That was unbelievable.
It is the best polling place.
I assume the vote of applause was for him. I'm sitting here thinking, Tremaine's work has really popped. The crowd is responding to him. And, Thank you, guys.
Go Bulldogs.
Guests, Nicole Wallace, Gene Robinson.
Gene Robinson, Orangeburg, South Carolina native.
That's right. Go Bulldogs, the South Carolina State
Is
Bulldogs.
what Tremaine was describing there, is that resonating for you in terms of being from there, but also the trip you just got back from?
Totally resonates with what I heard. And I spent most of the week down in South Carolina, both in Orangeburg and in Charleston. And when I was not eating, at this discussion, I talked to a lot of people, a lot of African-American voters who first thought this was an emergency election, that it was an emergency to get rid of Donald Trump, who cited the fact, you know how Donald Trump has this Obama fixation and wants to erase everything Obama? Well, that has resonated in a powerfully negative way with at least the voters I talked to, and they resent it and they're angry about it, that he's essentially trying to pretend that the Obama administration never happened, and in fact it did happen, and voters are insisting on that reality. A lot of voters sounded like a panel of MSNBC experts. They were trying to calculate electability, but in the end, I heard Biden,
Did you get their numbers? Can we book them?
I booked the whole state at this point. But I heard Biden. I heard a lot of Biden. And on that campus, and the adjacent campus of Claflin University, you know, if there is this generation gap and this groundswell of younger black voters for Bernie Sanders, I just didn't happen across it. I found some people who were kind of interested in some of his policies, interested in Elizabeth Warren's policies. A couple of people mentioned Tom Steyer, who's really been on the airwaves down there. But mostly what I heard was Biden.
You heard Biden. I heard from three sources close to Biden today. One, a senior campaign official, and they described the vice president at this hour as, quote, very good and excited. I mean, they've seen probably more than we can share at this point about how this night may go for the vice president. There are already, I think, two stories will emerge after tonight if the vice president former vice president is indeed triumphant in South Carolina. One, there will be questions about the competence of his campaign. I think it was sort of a behind closed doors murmur. I think after a win tonight, which is what the campaign is hoping for and expecting, I think you'll start to hear people that care very much about the vice president's success call for strengthening and maybe reinforcing the campaign itself.
Meaning that if he comes out of South Carolina seeming like a viable potential nominee, the campaigin will have to be changed and scaled up to match that?
But just I think there's a hunger for a more competent, a sharper campaign, and I don't know if you heard that in the state as well.
I didn't hear just hints of that in the state, but not in such detail. But I think that it is true. It is objectively true that it has not been an impressive campaign in terms of the way it's been run.
I was shocked to look at the numbers today. I was interested to see how much has Tom Steyer spent in South Carolina, and it's you know, over $20 million. It's a ton. But Biden spending, including pro-Biden super PAC spending, not even just by his campaign, it's less than $1 million in South Carolina. I mean, if he does well, if he matches his polls and he wins, it's not going to be because he's made a huge effort in the state.
And I think the concerns from people who love him, from people who want to see him be successful, are that's just right. That he's doing his part, but that the campaign needs to ramp up online fundraising. The second thing I heard, I asked a senior campaign official what their definition of success will be on Tuesday, and they said delegate accumulation. They did not say the word winning one state. That's, I mean, their definition for success on Tuesday is to do well in North Carolina, Tennessee, Houston, Dallas, and parts of Virginia. So I think the campaign is already fine-tuning what will be their work starting tomorrow morning if they have a good night tonight. But I think in some ways the Biden primary campaign starts tonight.
Yeah, it's, you know, it's fascinating thinking about the fact that we are 3 days away from Super Tuesday. There are states, particularly southern states, that pretty much always vote the way that South Carolina votes.
Right. I think this is that list, right?
Exactly.
I mean, North Carolina, Tennessee, Houston, Dallas, and parts of Virginia.
You know.
So South Carolina is good at picking nominees, and they're good at foretelling how some of the states that we're going to see on Tuesday are going to vote. But it'll be interesting if Joe Biden does as well as he's expected to tonight in South Carolina, to see him do that, having underperformed and performed very poorly in all the other early states. We've just never seen that before.
And he had, I mean, you talked about how much paid advertising Steyer has. I mean, I think that, and I asked the vice president about this, you know, Bloomberg's candidacy was pegged on a bet that Biden wouldn't be viable. Biden's survival is now pegged on a bet that Bloomberg will collapse. I mean, their interconnectivity is fascinating.
Bloomberg got in predicated on Biden's collapse.
Correct.
Yep.
And now Biden's survival is predicated on Bloomberg's collapse.
Yep.
All right, these early primaries have all had a lot of competition on the front pages. The Iowa caucuses, you might remember, happened just a couple of days before the Senate vote in the president's impeachment trial. The New Hampshire primary happened on the day federal prosecutors started quitting in protest of the president and the attorney general meddling in ongoing criminal cases. Well, today, voters have been going to the polls in South Carolina in what is yet again another split-screen moment. Authorities today announcing the first U.S. death from the deadly coronavirus that is spreading across the globe and that has shocked the global economy. In addition to the first U.S. death today in Washington state, a man in his 50s, officials have announced a slew of newly diagnosed U.S. coronavirus cases. Yesterday and today, both Oregon and Washington, local authorities today announcing that also a long-term care facility in King County, Washington, is the site not only of 2 of the newly diagnosed cases. In addition, authorities say there are more than 50 people at that location, both residents and staff, who are showing respiratory symptoms. That facility is now closed to all visitors. At least 2 schools, an elementary school in Oregon and a high school in Washington, are also being temporarily closed. So far, U.S. testing rates for coronavirus are lagging far, far behind many of our allies. Today, the government announced measures intended to speed up the pace of testing. Joining us now is Dr. Joseph Fair. He's a virologist. He serves as a special advisor to USAID, for whom he's been doing work on Ebola in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Dr. Fair, thanks for taking time to be with us tonight. We appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me.
So we now have multiple cases of what officials are calling community transmission of this virus in the United States. Why is that an important benchmark?
It's an important benchmark because, frankly, these are what we would call cases of unknown origin. We don't really know where they got it from. And it also brings up further complications in the sense that since we don't know where they got it from, it makes it much more intensive effort to identify their contacts and who they've been in contact with over the past few weeks, the last 14 days in particular, and trace those individuals, monitor those individuals very heavily. So every degree of separation, you're going to have further cases that we don't know about.
With this first U.S. death being announced, with the first schools being closed in the United States, with these very worrying reports about a long-term care facility where they've got 2 diagnosed cases and a lot of symptomatic people who have not yet been tested, do local communities, local officials, at this point have a clear sense of what they should do if they're the site of the next case or the next potential outbreak? Are U.S. protocols on this essentially clear to the people who are going to be putting this stuff into motion?
There's always a learning curve just because in between epidemics and pandemics, we tend to forget these things and they tend to go away from the news headlines. So they tend to drop in importance. So every time a new one comes up, especially if it's a new virus with which we're unfamiliar, then there's going to be new protocols. There's going to be new case definitions, et cetera. But the basics are the same. We need to get diagnostics out to every facility we possibly can around the country, and that is currently happening this week. By the end of the week, I think I heard the estimate that we'll be able to test at least 10,000 cases per day, and that's appropriate. The order of protocol is to isolate known cases, isolate and treat, rather, identify their contacts, trace those contacts, and then isolate them if needed.
Dr. Joseph Fair, virologist, thanks very much for being with us tonight. We have another one of these split-screen nights. Really appreciate it, sir. All right.
Absolutely. Scary. When you talk about the 50 employees, that puts a lump in your throat.
Yeah, it's a mix of employees, these people who work at the long-term care facility, and the residents there. We've seen that it strikes older people hardest in terms of people having severe symptoms and being at risk of dying from this thing. So the situation in Washington state, they've declared a state of emergency in the state right now. But the multiple new cases and the first death and the situation in that nursing home is a stark thing.
If it isn't in your life or thoughts yet, sadly, it will be shortly. So our political coverage will pause here. When we come back, Steve Kornacki at the big board with coming up on 41 minutes till polls close. We're going to talk about the age of the electorate today, showing up the polls in South Carolina.
You've been hearing a lot about 5 5G, but there's 5G.
And then there's Verizon 5G.
We're building the most powerful 5G experience for America.
It's more than 10 times faster than some other 5G networks.
And it's rolling out in cities across the country.
So people can experience speeds that ultra-wideband can deliver.
1.7 gigs here in Houston.
1.8 gigs here in frigid Omaha.
Almost 2 gigs here in Los Angeles. That's outrageous.
It's like an 8-lane highway compared to a 2-lane dirt road.
Fact is, every insurance company hopes you drive safely. But Allstate helps you with DriveWise. Feedback that helps you drive safer, and that could lower your cost. Now that you know the truth, are you in good hands?
Hey there. Kelly Clarkson. What are you doing on our sofa? What are you doing on your sofa?
Try Wayfair.
You got this. Whoa. Yeah.
Let me try.
Oh. All right, get it. Yeah. Oh, that's what I'm talking about. Except that's my seat, so. Right. So maybe after the movie, let's talk about that bedroom of yours.
When was she in our bedroom?
Different folks have different strokes.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, get it, baby.
It's always a 3-day weekend at Golden Corral.
Different moves for different grooves.
Golden Corral, the only one for everyone.
I needed legal advice for my shop. That's when I remembered that my ex-boyfriend actually went to law school. So I called him. He didn't call me back.
If your ex-boyfriend isn't a lawyer, call LegalZoom and we'll connect you with an attorney. LegalZoom, where life meets legal.
Ambition lives in our DNA. Competition coursing through our veins, consuming us with a need to thrive.
It's just part of who we are. Hello, I'm William Shatner, and you may not know this about me, but years ago, I was diagnosed with a sleep disorder. And like millions of others, I was prescribed sleep equipment. Did you know sleep equipment manufacturers recommend daily cleaning? That's why I use SoClean. SoClean is fast and easy. It keeps my sleep equipment fresh every day without the need for disassembly.
With SoClean, daily maintenance is a snap. All you do is place your equipment in, close the lid, and walk away. That's it. You can try SoClean risk-free for 30 nights. Even shipping is free.
SoClean is so fast and gives you peace of mind that your sleep equipment is fresh each time you use it.
Call 1-800-493-3709 or go to SoClean.com to take advantage of this risk-free trial. Call 1-800-493-3709 now. So fast, so easy, SoClean.
Without this pill, we die.
He's doing the best he can for the country.
This is the perfect time to graduate.
There's like a lot of shooting happening.
It's about how we take care of one another and how we invest in the future.
These are thoughtful voters who, more than anything, want these candidates to cut to the chase.
Welcome back. A little over 37 minutes until the screen door slams. Polls close in South Carolina, and after that, we'll get some news on just what it is the voters are trying to say. Steve Kornacki knows a little bit about who turned out today in South Carolina. Steve?
Here's something really interesting, Brian. We have been talking about age being a major fault line in terms of how voters are deciding across these early primaries. Sanders cleaning up with younger voters, struggling mightily with older voters. That's what we've been seeing. So what is the age breakdown of this Democratic electorate in South Carolina? Here's what our exit poll is showing us. 72% 45 and older, almost 3 out of 4, 28% under 45. Obviously, that looks pretty lopsided. How does that compare to the other contests we've seen so far? I can show you in Iowa, in the Iowa caucuses, the under 45 share was 45%. In the New Hampshire primary, it was 35%. And in the Nevada caucuses, it was 36%. 45, 35, 36, and tonight, 28% under 45. This, by far, the oldest skewing electorate we've seen in the Democratic primaries so far.
And, Steve, can I follow up with you on that? I was looking back at 2016 in the Clinton-Sanders race in South Carolina. And what was interesting there, of course, was that Clinton ran away with it. But she did lose to Sanders the lowest the youngest cohort of voters.
Yeah.
Now, compared to 2016, the math that I'm doing here, probably poorly on the back of this envelope, tells me that we're actually at a significantly smaller proportion of younger voters turning out. I think in 2016 it was like 35% of the electorate was younger voters. Now it's down to 28.
We're seeing. I want to stress too, always, this is the first wave of exit poll data, so these numbers are not etched in stone. They may change as we get more data, and sometimes younger voters do come into those later waves, so this 28 could tick up some. But yes, two things that we're seeing here. It was 65-35. That was the spread in South Carolina in 2016. And also the electorate, we showed you this earlier, not as black. It is a little whiter this time. It was 61% black in our exit poll in 2016. It is 55% tonight. So again, these numbers a little older, a little more white. That's what we're seeing, at least in these early exit polls.
And whether or not you care about the demographic dynamics in any particular electorate, what's important there in terms of thinking about the Sanders campaign is that his theory of the case is that he will win, even if he alienates moderates and older voters to a certain degree. He will win because he will turn out more first-time voters and young voters. And when that doesn't happen, it hurts his theory of the case in terms of how he can get elected in the general.
Absolutely. A lot of the top-tier candidates have left the state of South Carolina. Joe Biden is in the state of South Carolina tonight, where he hopes to be able to take a victory lap and make a victory speech. Mike Memley is our man traveling with the campaign. Mike, if you've been listening to our coverage, then you overheard some of us talking about quote-unquote national Democrats. National Democrats would like to know there's a safe structure around Joe Biden going forward after tonight, no matter the result. National Democrats, some of them would like very much for the former mayor of New York to start writing checks, in effect, pay to the order of Joe Biden.
That's absolutely right, Brian. Now, it's interesting in terms of the location tonight, where we find Joe Biden tonight. This is the second of the 4 early primary nights that we've spent here in Columbia, South Carolina. You'll remember that 18 days ago, the day of the New Hampshire primary, the Biden campaign abruptly changed course, announced they would leave the state before polls even closed there, and come to South Carolina to begin to put their stake in the ground for what they hoped would be a comeback. I can't tell you, Brian, how markedly the mood around the Biden campaign has changed from 18 days ago till now. They knew that this was going to be a very difficult gauntlet to thread here, that everything just about had to go right for a campaign for which not everything has gone right often. But in the past week alone, we've seen them with a second-place finish in Nevada, then a strong debate performance from their perspective, and a televised town hall the next night that reminded voters of the Joe Biden that they've, all seemed to know and love over these years. And then the endorsement, of course, from Jim Clyburn, which was as much an endorsement for Democrats writ large as it was here in South Carolina, especially African-American Democrats. The Biden campaign has been insisting for weeks the African-American vote is the base of the party. That base of the party is squarely behind Joe Biden, and there's still life in him yet. We don't know the results yet tonight, but the great thing about covering Joe Biden over the years is that he's often not very coy, and he's expressing an awful lot of confidence today, saying flatly today that he will win South Carolina, and that winning South Carolina means he will be the Democratic nominee. That's the attitude from the former vice president tonight.
Not hard to figure out. Mike Memley, thank you for that.
Also, a potentially good bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Not coy at all.
Yes, that's right. I'm not coy. Help me beat Donald Trump. Exactly.
Let's bring into the conversation our friend Robert Gibbs, a veteran of the Obama campaign and of the Obama White House. Mr. Gibbs, it is great to have you with us tonight. We are thinking about your candidate's performance in 2008 in South Carolina. He goes in there, and the polls had said he was going to win by like 12. Turns out he won by 29 points, a big margin. Did that have the same kind of effect on you guys that we're talking about with Joe Biden's campaign tonight, where that was a stress test in effect, like, oh, geez, we might be the nominee here. Are we up to it? Is our campaign ready to win and ready to go the distance?
Well, we'd already won in Iowa, and so but there's no doubt that South Carolina for us was a rocket ship, and it wasn't just a small victory, it was a big one, followed up just a couple of days later by a really important endorsement by Ted and Caroline Kennedy that really put Obama on a firmer foundation of footing. And if you think about it, as you guys talked about, those states that come after Alabama, Georgia, Mississippi, Tennessee, North Carolina, that look and feel a lot like South Carolina, those were the places where we put those delegate wins together and started really adding to the pledged delegate count that put us ahead of Hillary Clinton.
So what do you make of this conversation tonight about the capabilities of the Biden campaign? Obviously, he hasn't been winning. He is hoping to and expressing confidence that he's going to be winning tonight. What does that mean? What does he have to do? What have you observed about his campaign in terms of his capacity to potentially take on either a front runner or a vying for front runner role after tonight?
I think there's two reasons why tonight is really important for Joe Biden. It used to be just winning tonight, but quite frankly, it's way beyond that. He needs a big night. He needs a big victory so that he can establish some momentum, because in 72 hours, we have Super Tuesday. And you all talked about how little he's spent in South Carolina. There's $1 million in advertising now spread across 15 states. That's it, right? The momentum and the storyline coming out of here are the paid ads that people are going to see in the next 72 hours. He has to have that momentum. Secondly, he came into this as the supposed frontrunner because of the electability argument. It is hard to prosecute the electability argument if you finish 4th in Iowa and 5th in New Hampshire. That puts some of that air back in the balloon of electability again, giving him some momentum inside of Super Tuesday. He needs this to be a two-person race after Super Tuesday, Bernie Sanders and him. And if you think about it, and I've said this a lot, you've got states now where you're going to have to build multiracial coalitions. And he's going to have to come out of here tonight, and he'll establish it as there's only two candidates thus far capable of doing that, he and Bernie Sanders. And I think he needs and he expects and he wants a big night, because he really does need that push.
Robert Gibbs, you and I both had the experience of the people who love our candidates the most saying sometimes the harshest things. Absolutely. And not saying them on the phone, but saying them on cable news. Here's what Jim Clyburn said today about the Biden campaign. Joe Biden is such a good guy. He hates to say no to his good friends. If we are successful tonight in this campaign, he has to relaunch. I think we will have to sit down and get serious about how we retool this campaign, how we retool the fundraising, how we do the GOTV Get Out the Vote. And at that point, many of us around the country will be able to join with him and help him get it right. Why is this happening today?
Well, I think this is that moment of relaunch, and quite frankly, they need it. If they didn't win tonight, it was impossible to see this going forward. But even a big night tonight still puts structural pressure on this campaign. They've got one office in California, one. You've got campaigns that have dozens of offices. Does he have the infrastructure? Does he have the fundraising? Does he have the political infrastructure to put together a big night tonight and have it make a difference going forward? It's a little bit like a ripple. And if it isn't big enough, it dissipates the farther you go out. He doesn't have a lot of money. Their fundraising has lagged. And again, I don't know that that's a staffing issue. I think that's a momentum and a storyline issue, and that's what has to change tonight.
Robert Gibbs, who, may I say, looks so anchor-ready tonight, should anything happen to us. He is, in effect, a Biden to our Obama.
This is a Brian Williams tie. That's why.
See, there you go. I knew there was something, but you're ready to go. Don't change a thing. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to go to one of the places Bernie Sanders hopes and expects to run up his numbers tonight in South Carolina.
The Ram ProMaster is perfect for all aspects of the job.
We have both the ProMaster City and the ProMaster. Ram has come through and proven their quality. The functionality of the vehicles are just above par.
The ProMaster City has a lot of power for its size.
Ram, with their ProMaster bodies, has really perfected what a cargo van means to contractors today.
Competitive commercial van owners or lessees are eligible for these incentives on the 2019 Ram ProMaster City and 2020 ProMaster.
A better question would be, where do I not listen to it?
While I'm eating my breakfast, on the edges of cliffs,
On a ski lift.
Everywhere.
Download Audible and start listening today. Frustrated that clean clothes you want to wear always seem to need an iron?
Next time, try Bounce Wrinkle Guard dryer sheets.
Just toss it in the dryer to bounce out wrinkles.
We tried these shorts with Bounce Wrinkle Guard and a pair without. The Bounce Wrinkle Guard shorts have fewer wrinkles and static and more softness. It's the world's first mega sheet that does the job of 3 dryer sheets. It also comes in unscented. If you don't love Bounce Wrinkle Guard, we'll give you your money back.
It's tough to quit smoking cold turkey, so Chantix can help you quit slow turkey. Along with support, Chantix is proven to help you quit. With Chantix, you can keep smoking at first and ease into quitting. So when the day arrives, you'll be more ready to kiss cigarettes goodbye. When you try to quit smoking with or without Chantix, you may have nicotine withdrawal symptoms. Stop Chantix and get help right away if you have changes in behavior or thinking, aggression, hostility, depressed mood, suicidal thoughts or actions, seizures, or worse, heart or blood vessel problems, sleepwalking, or life-threatening allergic and skin reactions. Decrease alcohol use. Use caution driving or operating machinery. Tell your doctor if you've had mental health problems. The most common side effect is nausea. Talk to your doctor about Chantix.
When you live on an island, surrounded by warm, clear water, and a million ways to enjoy it, it's amazing you'll ever have time to come up for air. Key West. Close to perfect, far from normal.
At Credible.com, we've helped tens of thousands of people save money by refinancing their student loans. In 3 minutes, we'll get you actual rates from multiple lenders. We could save you hundreds of dollars a month.
Visit Credible.com to see how much you could save.
Cover it up. That's what I did when I started losing my hair. But then I realized I could actually do something. Now I use Keeps, the easiest way to keep my hair. And it only costs $1 a day, which means no more covering up. Get started at Keeps.com.
All of your vitals and tests look perfectly normal. You seem healthy to me.
Yeah, that's all well and good, Doc, but what about
My credit. We don't check financial health here. This is a medical office. Let me refer you to Credit Sesame.
Credit Sesame? What's that, some radical new therapy?
Not exactly. It's a free app that gives you your credit score and helps you maintain healthy credit.
Do I need a prescription for Credit Sesame?
No, just your phone.
Download Credit Sesame for free today.
Welcome back. So this wasn't in South Carolina today, but that is Boston Common. Crowd size estimates started at around 10 grand, around 30 degrees, not enough to scare away Bostonians, especially Bostonians who support Bernie Sanders campaigning in what we are duty-bound to point out is the home state of his fellow Democrat Elizabeth Warren. We're going to make 2 stops in South Carolina now. Number 1, Katie Tur is outside a polling place in Greenville, the part of South Carolina known as the Upstate, an area where the Sanders forces hope to do well. Hey, Katie.
They certainly do hope to do well here, and they hope that the universities around here, like Clemson, will help put them over the edge. It looks quiet behind me, Brian, but don't be thrown off by that. Turnout at this precinct alone has more than tripled since the last presidential cycle. They had 155 walk-in votes in 2016. They have more than 500 so far today, and the polls are not yet closed. The Democratic Party has made real efforts in the last 5 years to make inroads up here. It is a very conservative part of the state, but Greenville is a place whose population has risen quite a bit in the last 5 years. And they say those are people that are coming in from out of state. They're retirees. They're young professionals. They believe that even if they come in as Republican voters, they're not South Carolina Republican voters. So they're not as conservative. And case in point, guys, I've been talking to voters here, including a handful of Republicans who have walked in here not to meddle, not to make mischief, but have walked in here because they don't like Donald Trump and they're looking for an alternative. And the names I've heard from those voters have been Pete Buttigieg and Tom Steyer. I've heard Steyer's name over and over again, and I've heard a lot of his name from African-American voters as well, which has proven that that $18 million he spent on TV ads here has clearly worked, at least to a degree.
All right, that's interesting to hear. Katie Tur, thank you. Cal Perry, smack dab in the middle of the state, Columbia and Richland County, part of the state where Hillary Clinton did well in 2016. Joe Biden is hoping for some of that same mojo. Hey, Cal.
Absolutely, a place where Democrats are hoping to make gains in the general election. In speaking to people here, the priority was defeating Donald Trump. That was universal, all for except to one person that I was able to speak to, who said that he would vote for anybody except for Mike Bloomberg, which was interesting. The other thing that happened here, which I thought was fascinating, was a number of people who we spoke to said they assume the vice president is going to carry South Carolina, and so they took the opportunity to vote for the candidate that they really believed in. Elizabeth Warren seemed to be at the top of that list. The final thing that I would leave you with, as this area skews a little bit younger, this is certainly a place that Democrats are hoping they're going to be able to make inroads in with Donald Trump, especially when it comes, very importantly here in South Carolina, to climate change, guys.
Thank you. Check your phone. Don't forget somebody's trying to get in touch with you.
We are joined now by our beloved colleague, Joy Reid, who is in Charleston with the one and only Reverend Al Sharpton. Rev Al himself had a double-digit showing in South Carolina in his own presidential bid in 2004, so he knows of what he speaks. Earlier this week, the Rev hosted a National Action Network South Carolina breakfast with all of the candidates. Joy, thank you for being with us. I am very much looking forward to hearing you and the Rev take this out.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to talk with you, Rachel. We're a little jealous of how warm you probably are sitting in that suit. It's actually really cold, even though we're down south. You know, one of the things that I've heard just around today, just talking with people who are involved in the campaigns off and on, a couple of things. Steyer. So earlier on my show, we had on Jimmy Williams, who's one of his advisors here. Steyer has really made a huge play. He's spent millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in this state. He's made this his must-win. He's done things like he was the largest person with the largest depositor in one of the only black-owned banks in the state. He's invested a lot in talking about race and how that impacts climate change. Things like that are things he's been doing before anybody else got here. Now, he had the advantage of being alone, really kind of in the state spending. And now that other people have come in, and he's got the competition of a much stronger Biden than a lot of people expected. Bernie Sanders is here. Elizabeth Warren actually has a strong campaign here. She's got a couple of offices she recently opened up, and she's actually been here. So there's been a lot of activity that's kind of dampened what Steyer is doing. But I think the thing to watch tonight are two things. Number one, what's the margin for Biden? Everyone assumes he's going to win. But does he win by 10 or does he win by 20? If he wins by 10, that's kind of expected. It's not clear how much that helps him going into Super Tuesday. If he wins by 20, then I think you're going to start to see some of the doubts about the other candidates, the Buttigieg's, the Steyers, the alternatives to him. They maybe start to lose a little steam going into the next races. It's not clear. It's about that margin. I think that's the number one thing that we're looking for. And then the second thing, really quickly, is who's number two? Because it's not clear whether number two will be Bernie, which is what everyone expects, or whether somebody like Steyer could sneak up and take the number two. For Bernie Sanders, finishing third in a state with this many African-American voters would be a sign that's not so good, because he's strong with Latino voters, he's strong with young African-American voters, but he has to prove he can get those voters to actually vote for him, and sort of non-aligned voters to vote for him. So that's what I'd be looking for tonight.
Let me bring in Reverend Al Sharpton as well into this conversation. Rev, as you have been listening to this analysis, if you've been talking to the candidates yourself there in South Carolina, what are you looking for in general, but also what do you think would count as a game-changing moment for Vice President Biden here?
I think if Vice President Biden scores double digits, particularly if he gets to 20%, he can then raise the argument that no one can win the general election, no one could beat Donald Trump without a large turnout in the black community. So far, the caucuses and the primaries that we've seen have been in mostly white states. New Hampshire and Iowa are over 20%, over 90% white. So he would have an argument that I'm the only one that has a broad enough base for turnout in November if he gets that. If he does not, he will then have a problem in convincing anyone that he's viable in terms of turnout at all. I think where Sanders has to come in is a strong second to get off of the whole profile he's gotten that he's good, but he can't win black votes. Because let's remember, Rachel, he lost the black vote in Nevada, even though he came out strong in the Latino vote. So there's a lot to watch here in the black vote, where 55 to 60% of the turnout will be black. This will be the test that has ramifications way beyond tonight, because it'll be the test to say who can really turn on the African-American voters, and you can't win in November without that.
Rev, it's Nicole. We were talking yesterday at 4 about the age gap. Are you interested to see if the young African-American vote does something different than the older African-American vote in South Carolina?
I am. I'm also interested in seeing whether or not there is a large turnout of young African-American voters. Because what we've not seen in Iowa and New Hampshire is this youth surge for Sanders that we keep hearing about. The surge has been more announced than we've seen at the polls. So the big question is, with this turnout being predicted to be bigger than it's been since '08 and maybe bigger, is a lot of that turnout young voters or not? And if it is not, then where is this surge for young voters for Bernie Sanders? That needs to be proven tonight. You have to remember, Nicole, this is a Saturday vote. So there's no excuse. If you have a surge, you've got to have it tonight. It's like a preacher on Sunday morning. If you can't fill the church Sunday morning, you can't fill the church.
Yeah, that's prime,
I love that.
Prime time by any standard. Rev Al Sharpton, Joy Reid in Charleston, thanks. We'll be checking back in with you. As we go to a break, I want to show you an event in Houston where Elizabeth Warren is expected. Think of that state, home to 28 million people, so many media markets, not all of them friendly to Democrats, but so little time. This one happens to be in Houston. When we come back, Steve Kornacki will crunch more numbers. We're within 15 minutes of poll closing. Stay with us.
A sommelier searches for the perfect wine. But I hear a different calling, the call of a schmear of cream cheese. For I am a sommelier. I practice my craft at Philadelphia. Here, we use only the freshest milk. Cat one, go, go! And the finest ingredients. What is this? Until perfection is achieved. He's ready. Schmears! Philadelphia, schmear perfection.
I'm all about living joyfully. The United Explorer card hooks me up. Getting more for getting away. Traveling lighter. Getting settled. Rewarded.
Learn more at theexplorercard.com.
I like Liberty Mutual. They get that no two people are alike. And customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need. What do you think?
I don't see it. Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty. At BMW, we didn't make just one SAV. We made the ultimate range of SAV. With unmatched power, luxury, and performance, the BMW X-Range is prepared for any road you travel. No matter who you are, no matter where you're going, no matter what's next, there's an X to take you there. Free in the lease a 2020 X3 X-Drive 30i for $479 a month.
Such news!
Focus Features invites you to the most joyfully romantic movie of the season.
You have been much missed in Highbury.
All right. The New York Times, Rolling Stone, and Vogue are all talking about Emma. 4 stars. It's deliciously wicked and absolutely stunning. Be charmed by the dazzling new vision of Jane Austen's beloved comedy.
Too wonderful.
Emma. Rated PG. Now in select theaters.
Alice loves the scent of Gain so much, she wished there was a way to make it last longer. Say hello to your fairy godmother, Alice. And long-lasting Gain scent beads, part of the irresistible scent collection from Gain.
I am totally blind, and Non-24 can throw my days and nights out of sync, keeping me from the things I love to do. Talk to your doctor and call 844-214-2424.
This is PillPack. It's my new pharmacy. Now I have my medications delivered. They arrive in little packages, so I don't have to sort the pills. And their service is free. I only pay my copays.
PillPack by Amazon Pharmacy.
Meet the Ninja Foodie Pressure Cooker. The best of pressure cooking and air frying, now in one pod. And with Tender Crisp technology, you can cook foods that are crispy on the outside and juicy on the inside. The Ninja Foodie Pressure Cooker. The pressure cooker that crisps.
Do you have concerns about mild memory loss related to aging? Prevagen is the #1 pharmacist-recommended memory support brand. You can find it in the vitamin aisle in stores everywhere. Prevagen, healthier brain, better life.
Break out the butter. Lobster Fest has something for every lobster fan, like wild-caught lobster, butter poached, creamy, and roasted. Or try lobster sautéed with crab, shrimp, and more. So hurry in and let's Lobster Fest. Or get it to go at redlobster.com.
Coming up on 11 minutes until poll closings in South Carolina. Steve Kornacki at the big board with who is voting in that state today and tonight for the first time.
Yeah, I want to take you back to last week first to set this one up. At this time last week, we were talking about that big Sanders win in Nevada. One of the things that fueled it, first-time caucus participants. Look at this. Half of the Democratic electorate last week said they had never attended one of those before, a caucus. They were first-time participants. Half of that electorate. What's the exit poll telling us it looks like tonight? Have you ever voted in a South Carolina primary before? 81% say yes this time. Fewer than 1 in 5 are first-time participants, just 18% right here. I can tell you, to put this in some perspective, if you went back to 2008, we're trying to find an apples-to-apples comparison here. 2008, the last time you had a competitive Democratic primary, coming off the competitive Democratic primary, 2004 to 2008. This number in 2008, the Barack Obama-Hillary Clinton race, 27%. In the South Carolina primary were first-time participants. Tonight, 18%.
So, Steve, and again, this follows along the same lines as the younger voting preferences that we've seen, right? Where Senator Sanders, last time in South Carolina, did very well among the youngest voters, but not very many turned out, and he got shellacked. Same thing in 2016, right? Senator Sanders actually did great among the very small number of voters who were first-time voters in South Carolina in 2016. No reason to expect a change in those sorts of voter preferences between 2016 and now?
I mean, yeah, it's a story much bigger than South Carolina. It's been the story of basically every poll we've seen since this race began. It has been the story of all of the initial primaries and caucuses. The younger you get, the better Bernie Sanders does. The older you get, the worse he does. The better Biden does, the better the other candidates do. And in South Carolina, it's not just a turnout issue. It's a population issue. This is just an older state in general. We're looking at an exit poll tonight telling us that about 10% of this electorate is 18 to 29. And that's a small share compared to what we get elsewhere.
All right, Steve Kornacki, thanks. Claire McCaskill, David Plouffe are watching along with us tonight. And I'm curious, starting with you, Claire, assuming you heard Nicole's dramatic reading of Congressman Clyburn's remarks on, shall we say, another cable network about what needs to happen tonight in the superstructure around Joe Biden if Joe Biden has a big night in South Carolina.
I think it's fair to say there's been a lot of discussion about Joe Biden's campaign. It's hard to explain why his fundraising has been so low. I mean, if you just look at South Carolina, it is amazing that someone who's expected to win the state tonight, and whether he wins by 10 or 20, it's a big victory, spent $1 million, and Steyer spent almost $20 million. That is an imbalance that is frankly astounding. So there is questions about why his fundraising has not been stronger if they're utilizing all the tools, especially online fundraising.
Claire, Congressman Clyburn said in that interview that he'd been holding his tongue until he'd made the endorsement, but now that he's on the inside, he's basically going to do everything he can to make sure that Joe Biden's campaign is up for the task of going the distance. I talked to someone else close to the campaign who hadn't seen the Clyburn comments, and they said, oh, thank God somebody finally said it on television. I mean, it's my sense that Joe Biden in the last 2 weeks has been outperforming his own campaign.
Yeah, and I do think that even if I just think there's value to say we're retooling everything after tonight, really try to turn the page and make this the beginning of the campaign for Joe Biden. I don't know if it'll work. I mean, frankly, I've talked to a lot of Democratic senators this week from all over the country, and there's various moods, but one overriding concern they all have is the debates have gotten very messy. They're not good overall for the Democratic nominee, and it's time for people to quit. How are we going to get people to quit? So I think after tonight, anybody who doesn't make the 15% threshold is going to start getting a lot of pressure to lay down their arms and join hands with the remaining candidates and get this thing narrowed down as quickly as possible.
Jeb Bush quit after this night 4 years ago. He had brought in his brother. It was the only campaign event the former President George W. Bush did. It was that wild debate where Donald Trump said, I think a few days before the South Carolina primary came out, you know, the full anti-war. South Carolina has a huge active duty and veteran population, or a huge veteran population and some active duty. And he won running away. And that was where Jeb Bush hung it up before Super Tuesday. I think the other question, though, for these other campaigns at this point is Bernie Sanders is the front runner for a lot of reasons. One of them is structural. He's the front runner because there are five other people competing for second place.
And because he's got a very good campaign.
Yeah, I said just one of them. Right. Just one of them is structural. Yeah. He's also got 10,000 people in Boston. I mean, a lot of people like him a lot.
Exactly. The 10,000 people in Boston, that's a movement. He's got a movement. Absolutely. And that takes you a long way. You know, Michael, I mean, who's going to drop out before Super Tuesday, right? Nobody's going to drop out tonight, I would think, right?
Well, then the inverse should be true. Anyone, I mean, if President Obama feels strongly about his former vice president, I mean, then people should boost Biden if they don't want to
well,
know the
now
field.
that, I think, will be definitely discussion even before Super Tuesday. I think that
like
it'll be like, okay, you know, if Joe Biden does very well in South Carolina, I think a lot of Democrats are going to be like, you know, on the phone to,
if there's going to be a hands-on-deck effort to try to boost Biden on the basis of this showing tonight, it has to happen between now and Tuesday.
Right, exactly. It should happen.
David Plouffe, can I ask you what is admittedly a totally ignorant, off-base question about the prospects of what's going to happen next year?
We love those around here. I've never asked anything but.
Can you run the Joe Biden campaign on Mike Bloomberg's money?
Well, that's really interesting. So we're talking about, by the way, this could be, we'll see in the next couple hours, but if Joe Biden wins and by some margin, the best night of his entire political career. Yet the discussions about changes in the campaign. So not a great discussion. So if I were them, I'd say, listen, because I agree with Claire. If Joe Biden wins tonight by some margin, I know this is harsh, only two people can be the Democratic nominee, Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. So Joe Biden should look at it as I now need to build and add a campaign that compete against Bernie Sanders. If Michael Bloomberg does drop out, maybe it's Wednesday, sure, there's great talent there and there's great money there. So maybe you put together some of Biden's political appeal with some of Bloomberg's money, you've got something interesting. But I really think that's where we are. And to your question, Nicole, will people drop out? You might see a couple drop out before Tuesday. It's only 72 hours. But the reality is Bloomberg needed Biden to lose South Carolina to have any chance. That, coupled with that's probably not going to happen, and his debate performances being so poor, I think has put a ceiling on his support. And the other candidates haven't shown the ability to grow outside of their natural basis. So the real challenge is, how does Joe Biden maximize tonight? Because if he does have a great night, it only matters to the extent it affects both Tuesday and the rest of March. And that will require new talent, a lot more money. And let's not let the candidate off the hook here. He's got to perform exceedingly well in every interview, in every debate, in every speech, because even if he wins tonight, and it is down to two candidates, Bernie Sanders is still the front runner.
We are inside 4 minutes, 3.5 to go until the poll closes in South Carolina. Rachel,
just interject just there for 1 second, just to say, if you are in South Carolina and you are listening to us right now because you are streaming us or anything, you should know that if you are at a polling place and you are in line, even if you are still in line when the polls close at 7 o'clock, you will be allowed to vote. So to the extent that this is, you're in the electorate and you're hearing us here, stay in line, even if you're worried that the polls are going to close. If you're in line, they will let you vote.
Yeah, we don't say that often enough. All through the primary and general election,
exactly right.
That is the case. So if Joe Biden has the night Joe Biden's forces are hoping for, that will cause movement in the center of the Democratic Party.
I mean, listen, Bernie Sanders is winning this nomination fight so far.
Yes, he is.
And to Nicole's point, a lot of that is because of he's a singular kind of candidate, and the other candidates are splitting the non-Bernie vote. he's also running a very, very good organizing effort that looks a lot like a political movement.
Yeah.
Which means it's sustainable and which means it has built since 2016.
I think the structural thing is the second.
But those things go together. And if it turns out that Joe Biden is going to win both this contest and the confidence of the other candidates in the race, that he would both be a good nominee and that he's a better bet than Bernie Sanders for beating Donald Trump. I mean, I think that it's going to be a moment. And I do think that the moment has to happen before Tuesday if it is going to make a difference, because you wait till after Super Tuesday and Senator Sanders will have run off with the nomination and there won't be another chance for anybody else to get in there.
We're inside 2 minutes. Nicole, does that mean that you got to put his campaign up on the rack and look at the undercarriage and look at the guts of the engine and all that?
Look, I take David Pleff's point, having been a much maligned campaign staffer, you know, it's a lot easier to blame the staff than the candidate, but his reputation is for speaking truth to power, and you can see why. I mean, the candidate has to perform as consistently as he has probably the last 15 days. I cannot sort of explain clearly enough how emotional it is. When you're losing, you feel like crap. And so there's nothing that reforms a campaign like winning. I mean, the whole window to fix it is if he wins tonight now, because it's possible he doesn't win a big state on Tuesday. So this is really going to be probably the most critical window in which to, if Joe Biden's campaign is going to be the one that gives the Democratic primary voter a choice between Bernie and somebody else, it's going to have to move very quickly.
But it also calls for a very specific kind of political skill, which is that now the Biden campaign and the candidate himself have to have the skills and the ability and the confidence and the wherewithal to go to the other candidates and to make their case. If they need to consolidate the field for Biden to win, that's work of a very specific kind, and I don't know how good they'll be.
It's also changing the definitions of success. I mean, I can't imagine that anyone else in this moment is going to have 10,000 people come out to see them. I mean, Biden, you know, I mean, there are also things in the news that Biden's going to have to showcase his expertise. The coronavirus is one of them.
Yeah, it's important that 10,000 people were in the cold at Boston Common today, cheering for Bernie Sanders. What a race it's been thus far. So here's the countdown against our big board here in the studio as we approach 7 o'clock Eastern time, and it's time to tell you that NBC News is projecting at 7 p.m. Eastern time, Joe Biden will win when all the votes are counted in South Carolina. Let's remember, this is his first primary victory. Let's remember, this is only the second primary. And let's show you Biden headquarters, where we couldn't help but notice earlier that this network's coverage was on their big board. Rachel Maddow.
This is obviously what the Biden campaign was hoping for, was why they were projecting all of this confidence. I will say that it does matter that we are having a poll closing projection. The polls closed at 7. This projection of this victory is at poll closing. You can extrapolate from that this will likely be a substantial victory for Vice President Biden. And ultimately, it doesn't matter, you know, how much you win by. If you win, he needs these bragging rights. He needs this momentum shift. But this is the thing Joe Biden needed to do tonight. He has done it, and now let the games begin in terms of figuring out what this does to the rest of the field. It will be an interesting and important race for second place and third place tonight.
It will be.
And it will be interesting. I mean, Bernie Sanders is not in South Carolina tonight. Neither is Elizabeth Warren. But watching down ticket, watching what happens with Steyer, watching what happens with Buttigieg and Warren and Klobuchar and Sanders is going to be important, because there's going to be brokerage talks right now among the rest of the field to see about what's going to happen with this front-runner status that Sanders has, that's causing so much agita in so much of the rest of the Democratic Party.
And this is arguably the most important piece of the Democratic voting constituency. I'm not a Democrat. I don't know why South Carolina goes third. They should go first.
This is the reliable vote every time, loyal Democratic base. African Americans, African American women who will dominate this vote today. So listen to these people. Joe Biden's first primary victory ever, by the way.
That's right. Out of all the times he's ever run for president, this is the first state he's ever won.
Primary.
So, Steve Kornacki, we've established the history of this, and Rachel made an important point. When we call a race at poll closing time, there is overwhelming certainty about it. Our election director is very conservative about such things for good reason. So one of the things I want to know from you is, where is this going to bring us in terms of raw vote? Where is this going to leave us in terms of delegates after tonight?
Yeah, a lot just changed in this Democratic race in the last few minutes. So let me take you through some of the most important numbers we can from this exit poll. As you say, and you will see, this is overwhelming what we're looking at. We have talked for so long about South Carolina being the first test of the black vote. Here you go. 60% for Joe Biden among African Americans in South Carolina. Remember, an outright majority of this electorate today is African American. Biden wins 60% of it. Sanders all the way back at 17%, barely ahead of Tom Steyer, who's at 14% among black voters. Everybody else there in single digits. Significantly, if you think back to 2016, if you remember the South Carolina primary, Bernie Sanders got clobbered. He got clobbered, especially because of black voters. He got 14% of the black vote in 2016. Tonight, he has moved that up to just 17%. So that's the single most important factor here. By the way, we have talked about Sanders overall in national polls being very popular with Democratic voters, 70, 75%, numbers like this. How about this? Black voters in South Carolina, their opinion of Bernie Sanders, much more mixed. 56% favorable, 36% unfavorable. He's not unpopular, but compare that 56-36% favorable, unfavorable rating among black voters to Joe Biden. 85-11. So Joe Biden just absolutely destroying Bernie Sanders with black voters. Black voters, an outright majority of this electorate. That's the recipe for a landslide in South Carolina. We can talk about this later. That has big implications for what's to come Tuesday and beyond, potentially, with the black vote. And one other note, you mentioned the delegates. There are 54 delegates, Brian, that are up for grabs here in South Carolina tonight. You can see that right here. What has happened, and it's not been updated here yet, I was hoping it would be, our decision desk right now is confident that at least 20 of those 54, when all is said and done, will go to Joe Biden. So that will move him to 35 at least. Nobody else at this point, our decision desk is confident, will get delegates out of South Carolina. So that Biden number is going to grow as the night goes on. You can see he has already moved past Pete Buttigieg. He will continue to move past Pete Buttigieg. There are still 34 more delegates from South Carolina to be allocated. But just with that projection and the overwhelming scale of it, our decision desk is confident that Biden will get at least 20 delegates here. And already he's in second place about 2 minutes after polls closed.
All right. Steve Kornacki at the board. So, David Plouffe, what just happened to the Democratic race?
Well, I think this is a two-person race right now. There's only two people that I think are going to accept our party's nomination. It's either Bernie Sanders or Joe Biden. Now, I talked to some Biden officials today, and they said even if they did as well as they could tonight, which it looks like they could, and they leveraged that as well as they could between now and Tuesday, they still fully expect Bernie Sanders to exit Super Tuesday with a pretty significant delegate lead. So in order for that delegate lead, I think, to get closer, you're going to have a lot of the candidates drop out, either between now and Tuesday or right after Tuesday. Joe Biden's going to have to run a great campaign, because that requires him on March 10th and 17th and 24th and later in April then to actually beat Bernie Sanders by some margin, so that, as we see in South Carolina tonight, the only way you net delegates in a significant way is to beat your opponent handily. So the question really will be, and then you've got Bloomberg. So Biden is going to be, I think, really harmed on Tuesday, because Bloomberg is going to take votes and delegates. Not all of that would have gone to Biden, but I think it's fair to say a lot of it would. So, Joe Biden escaped, you know, his political obituary tonight. He's going to have a big win. I think he goes from someone we were wondering a couple weeks ago, would he make it till March? Now I think being Bernie Sanders' main contender, but he's now got to fully leverage this. And Rachel's right. He's got to have the political skill to talk to some of the other candidates. He's got to raise resources. He's got to perform better than he's performed in the campaign to date. And I think the superdelegates and other party leaders are going to have to come out. If they believe Joe Biden is the best candidate, it's much better to do that now, in my view, than wait till Milwaukee at the convention and say, now we've decided, you know, that we think Joe Biden's best. Make your case now.
David, what are the conversations like between campaigns when they happen at moments like this in the race? I mean, who calls? Is it the candidate? Is it staff to staff? Is it campaign manager to campaign manager? Is there bargaining? Is it friendly? Is it like an auction? I mean, how does it go?
Well, there's all that, although let's be honest. So it's not like anybody else in the field has a bunch of delegates to say, hey, Joe Biden, if I get out, will you make me your VP because I got all my delegates? You know, so I think at the end of the day, there'll be conversations at the candidate level, at the staff level. But 90% of this, really, to be honest, isn't about anything the Biden campaign does. I mean, it's going to be about the individual candidates, Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar and Tom Steyer and Mike Bloomberg, maybe even Elizabeth Warren, taking stock and saying, what's the point of going forward? Unless you believe that you could come in third or fourth or fifth in delegates and somehow the convention will say, you know what, Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden, we're going to skip you and pick somebody who came in third, fourth, or fifth. It's not going to happen. So there'll be conversations between the candidates, between the staffs. But right now, most of this is on the people still in the race who have to make a hard decision. Now, if Joe Biden looks like somebody who can go the distance, that might give them a little more confidence. Because, again, Mike Bloomberg, Pete Buttigieg, Amy Klobuchar all have been pretty clear, as strongly as they feel like they should win. They don't think Bernie Sanders should win. And they're worried about him as a nominee.
I participate in some of these conversations. I mean, they're ugly, and there are two emotions that drive them, pride and shame. Can you make them feel some pride in being part of something that, if they agree on some policies, or if they care about something a lot, in this field, it might be climate change or something, you know, that it will be made a central issue. The other one is shame. Telling another campaign, do you want it on you? If we're fighting amongst ourselves and not taking on the other party. I mean, and it's not really a backroom thing. I mean, you play on another campaign's pride and shame publicly in forums like this.
Ken, though, we do have this weird factor this year that we've never had before, which is that Mike Bloomberg is currently in the race. He has spent over $500 million already. Yeah. He's not competed in any of these states, but he's still this huge factor because of the ads, because of the money, because of the support that is translated to. And he has said, whoever the nominee is gets my money. Yeah. My money will run for president against Donald Trump. And Bernie Sanders says he won't take it, but all of the other candidates would. Yeah. And maybe Bernie would change his mind when it comes down to it if he ends up being the nominee. But when in those kind of calculations that David is talking about, if you are the Klobuchar campaign or the Warren campaign or the Buttigieg campaign, and you're thinking, is there any reason for me to go on? Can I really go the distance? Can I really compete? Well, if you stay in the race, you potentially could win the biggest lottery of all time by being the candidate left standing for some reason when one of the frontrunners fell and Bloomberg needed to put his money behind whoever was left.
I think we're just getting to the point where it's getting late to rack up delegates. I mean, after Tuesday, I think that just gets harder for anyone other than these two, but maybe not.
The whole raison d'etre of Bloomberg's campaign is to defeat Donald Trump. Right. I mean, and he's in because he doesn't think Bernie Sanders can do that. So it just
and
logically,
because he didn't think Biden could do it. He thought that Biden wasn't running
he thought that Biden couldn't do it. But he's a data-driven guy, right? I mean, he's got to look at the numbers, look at where he is. The thing is, he might want to wait till after Super Tuesday, though. I mean, he may want to see what he's bought for his $500 billion since he hasn't run in a primary yet. And so that's why it's hard for me to imagine him dropping out before Super Tuesday.
But if he doesn't perform, if he doesn't have a Mike Bloomberg miracle on Super Tuesday, he is going to preclude anybody else from rising to a level where they can seriously challenge Sanders in terms of the number of delegates you need to contest the nomination.
That's the structural piece.
Yeah. And so Bloomberg's decision needs to come before Tuesday if that's going to be the way he decides. Right?
Yeah, or you could, I mean, there's a third way for the Bloomberg campaign. I mean, they could change out all that. So ads have been placed. If Biden raises gazillion, like Bloomberg-sized money tonight, he doesn't have time to buy ads. He can't buy airtime.
Right, they've already reserved their airtime, right?
But you can switch out an ad. I mean, Bloomberg could switch out. I mean, if Bloomberg's looking at legacy and having someone to choose from for Democrats other than Bernie Sanders, he could switch his paid advertising to be pro-Biden.
So keep all of his reserved ad time, but literally switch the content of the ads to say, I'm Mike Bloomberg and I want you to vote for Joe Biden.
Or just congratulations to Joe Biden on a decisive win in South Carolina. We share the same, philosophies. I mean, you can do anything with a paid message, but it is, I think it's the more realistic question, because I think you're right. He's not going to pull out before Tuesday, but he could do something with his money, his paid advertising.
He could certainly signal that, okay, but, I'm okay with Biden, and if you don't want me, I'm okay with Biden.
Right. Why would you half run for president on Super Tuesday, though? You know what I mean? Like,
why
Or billionaires. I mean, I don't know.
Why would any of this happen?
You know what? I can answer that. I can answer that. Three reasons. One, the debates were harder than he thought they were.
Yeah.
Two, the stop and frisk wasn't washed away by all the African-American mayors that have endorsed him and worked with him on guns and other things. And three, Biden performed better in South Carolina than they thought.
I've got to say, anecdotally, I did not hear a lot of nice things about Mike Bloomberg in South Carolina. Now, he wasn't running there, but obviously people were aware of him and aware of his campaign and had seen some of his ads. They'd seen more of Tom Steyer's ads, frankly. But I was actually kind of surprised. I heard kind of a more negative take on Mike Bloomberg than I thought I would hear.
Mike Memley earlier tonight reported he got a straight-up victory prediction earlier today from the Biden forces. Mike is standing by to talk to us. And Mike, I'm hearing from a national Democrat who's involved in all of this. Two things. They hope they send Joe out short and sweet remarks, and they hope they make a production out of him flying overnight to somewhere that begins with maybe California, a Super Tuesday state, where he can, get some media attention for going after Tuesday.
Brian, as one staffer put it to me, they actually want to let all of us say a lot of nice things about the candidate for a little while because there's been a lot of backseat driving of the Biden campaign since the earliest days. And I will say there are two things that the senior leadership of this campaign has been saying to me from the beginning. The first is that, listen, the candidate who will win the Democratic nomination is the one who can demonstrate the broadest coalition of support, especially among African-American voters. And the results tonight speak to the fact that they believe Joe Biden is that. Tomorrow, if you're wondering, he's flying to Selma, Alabama. That is a Super Tuesday state, and he'll be joining with the commemorations of the anniversary. He'll be doing other events there. The other thing they've been saying, and Andrew Yang was the math candidate, they say Joe Biden is the delegate math candidate. And the results tonight, as Rachel was saying earlier, the fact that we're able to project so quickly means Joe Biden is going to pick up an awful lot of delegates tonight, most of them, if not all of them, from the state of South Carolina. And in order to eat into Bernie Sanders' delegate advantage to this point, they need to make up that ground, and they're going to do it in Super Tuesday states with the highest African-American populations. If you look back to 2016, Hillary Clinton's 361 pledged delegate lead over Bernie Sanders can entirely be attributed to the 14 states with the highest concentration of African-American voters. The Biden campaign doesn't have a lot of resources. It doesn't have what the other campaigns, especially the billionaire candidates, do. But what resources they do have, they're pouring aggressively into what they call CBC districts, Congressional Black Caucus districts. A lot of CBC members have endorsed Joe Biden. They're trying to pick off as many delegate wins as they can in those districts where they are weighted stronger delegate districts as well. So that's the roadmap for Joe Biden at this point. The other big formula, though, is what you've been talking about all night. The field has to narrow, and they especially look at Tom Steyer and how he was polling very strong in Nevada and South Carolina early on. He fell off the map, really, in Nevada. They hope to see the same happen here in South Carolina tonight, and they say Michael Bloomberg should see Tom Steyer as a cautionary tale for what happens. The party desperately wants to rally around somebody who could win. The Biden campaign has made beating Trump front and center of its argument since the beginning, and now Bernie Sanders increasingly is front and center in their argument. One last thing, I heard from a prominent Democrat here in South Carolina today that there was unusually high turnout in Charleston in some of the more affluent, you could call them Joe Cunningham Republican voter precincts. Those are Democrats who want to see a freshman Democrat in a Republican-leaning district reelected to the House, and they don't think Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket is that person. So Joe Biden, things have not always gone his way in this campaign, but they may be going right at the right time. And the fear among those moderate Democrats about a Bernie Sanders at the top of the ticket coalescing with a map that's favorable to Joe Biden finally at this point.
Mike Memley in the gym, standing in front of the 10-foot version of Mike Memley on the wall in the back of the gym. Mike, thank you very much. And over to Steve again. We're pivoting a bit while we wait for a raw number to come out of South Carolina to preview Tuesday.
Yeah, this is the big question here for Biden. Obviously, you've been talking about it, Mike, just was, can he use this as a springboard into this? Tuesday night, over 1,300 delegates are up for grabs. Biden is hindered. He's been talking about it, the lack of money he's had. Bloomberg's been on the airwaves here. He hasn't. Sanders has some big advantages. It was clear that this night was going to be better for Sanders than Biden. The question is how much better? Let me take you through what tonight could mean for Super Tuesday. Let's start in California. Sorry, let me try that again. Let's start in California. The pen isn't working. Let's start in California, though. 415 delegates. This is a third of what's up for grabs on Tuesday. Now, the problem for Biden here is all of the polling has pointed to a very big Bernie Sanders win. So big, in fact, that there is a question of whether any candidate except Sanders will hit that crucial 15% threshold to get delegates. So number one, if you're Joe Biden, what do you want out of tonight? You want enough momentum to clear the 15% statewide hurdle in California, to be able to get delegates statewide there, and to keep Bernie Sanders from gobbling up 300 of those delegates. If nobody else is hitting that threshold, Sanders could be in position to get 300 delegates out of California. So Biden hopes that he can hit 15% there. He can contain the damage in California. You move to Texas, the second biggest prize. The polling has been more competitive between Biden and Sanders in Texas. If you're Joe Biden, you hope ideally this could propel you to a win in Texas, or at least something close where Sanders isn't getting a big delegate advantage out of it. And then Mike was just talking about it, the states with large African-American populations. If South Carolina is a preview of coming attractions, so to speak, start here in Arkansas. These states in here in the Southeast that are voting on Tuesday, if Biden could run up, get victories, and to the extent possible, run up the score in these states, he could end up netting over Sanders, let's say 75, 80 delegates or so. He could start to eat into that California advantage that Sanders is going to have. If you're Biden, you want to survive on Tuesday. You're going to be behind Sanders in total delegates. You want to be within striking distance. You want to emerge from Tuesday with a clear one-on-one. And we can talk about this later. You want to be in position to take advantage, because that calendar later in March may be more favorable to Biden.
And you're probably going to need free media to make your points coming out of a victory in South Carolina. Claire McCaskill, what happens to your political party after tonight?
Well, I think it's still going to be a lot of angst. There's going to be a lot of emotion. There's going to be a lot of people that are upset, both Bernie supporters who don't understand why everyone's not getting on board, and people who don't think Bernie should be at the top of the ticket because they're in more conservative states. They're going to worry about why aren't these other people dropping out. And Steve just ran through something that I think sometimes we forget, and that is the margins matter. How big a margin you have. You know, we used to have winner take all. And that was a much different primary process. I'm sitting next to the guy who knows the way to count delegates. He is somebody who is a delegate counter in his gut. And this is going to be delegate counting now. How close can Bernie and Joe Biden keep to one another to keep one from running away with a margin that is hard to catch? And that's why the swath of Southwest states and going into the South, and then on March 10th, when you have more conservative states that are going to be voting, you have to assume that the more conservative states are going to be more Joe Biden friendly than states like California, which I don't think we'd call conservative.
Claire, endorsements don't always make a difference. The Jim Clyburn endorsement seemed to make a really big difference for a few reasons. It was heartfelt, it was well-timed, and Joe Biden just had one of those weeks where an emotional endorsement from Jim Clyburn seemed to up his game. He had an emotional performance at a town hall the next night. How does the Biden campaign replicate that formula?
Well, it's hard to replicate the affection that the voters of South Carolina have for Jim Clyburn in other states. You would have to have a figure like Jim Clyburn, who has such resonance in the black community, that when he speaks, he has such authority and comes with such integrity that it really moves voters, particularly voters in the black community. So they will, I'm sure, the Biden campaign is busy looking for those types of figures, but there aren't, unfortunately for the Biden campaign, there's not a lot of Jim Clyburns out there.
Would an Obama endorsement do it?
Yeah, except I got to tell you, I think that President Obama is going to be respectful of the process. I think he will take the position. I haven't talked to him about it. Maybe others have, but I haven't talked to him about it. But I have to assume he wants to support the nominee. And I think he will, he probably wouldn't have liked it if somebody put the finger on the scale in the middle of his fight for delegates And I think he'll probably wait and let this play out further and see how Joe and Bernie and the other candidates do in the next couple of weeks.
David Plouffe, you're not avoiding this question. We're just going to move the camera to the left, after all. Do you concur?
Let's talk about delegates. Yeah, I think President Obama and I think other leading figures, we're still early in this process. And I think you certainly want to let more time, more voting happen before you put a thumb on the scale. I'm not even sure it would be helpful. Because I think right now the question is, Joe Biden just have a great night, is can he continue to put this together? And just to really follow on both what Claire said and Steve about California, I talked to some folks in the Bloomberg campaign today, and their data would show if the California primary happened today, he would cross the statewide threshold and Biden wouldn't. So that tells you Joe Biden, this again is maybe the best political night of his life. He gets to enjoy it for 5 seconds, and then he's got to move on and fully capitalize. So if he's not able to get viable in California, no matter how well he does in the South, and I think he could do well, it's going to be super challenging for him. The other thing to remember is over 2 million votes have already been cast in Super Tuesday states. So the early vote largely was happening at a time where Joe Biden was not doing particularly well. So he's also, I think, going to have to overperform on Election Day votes in places like California and Texas.
What would be the most important things that Biden could do right now to, in your words, get viable in California, given the resources that he's got, given the talent that he's got, given how he's been performing as a candidate, given his options? And we know he's off to Selma tomorrow, and he's got to keep the whole map in mind beyond just California. What's the most important thing he could do to get himself above 15% in the Golden State?
Well, first of all, give an amazing speech tonight. And I would say not even give a great first 60 or 90 seconds that whips around California and elsewhere. He's got to really nail that. Secondly, he's going to have to do a tremendous amount of satellite TV into California, online interviews, African-American and Latino interviews. The Latino community right now is breaking Sanders' way, and that's a big problem for Joe Biden, at least it is in California. I think Biden will do a little better in that community in Texas, which is slightly more conservative. They're going to have to, it is late for advertising. You can still do a lot of digital ads, though, potentially on Monday. So they're up against it because a lot of votes in California have already come in, so he is going to have to overperform on Election Day vote. But that's how precarious this is. As well as he did tonight, I think this whole campaign could come down to what happens in California. And if Bernie Sanders is the only one viable, and he does net, triple digits in terms of delegates, it's going to be really hard to erase that. Now, if both Biden and Bloomberg are viable in California, you could make the argument that that's actually helpful to Biden.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Claire. As we go to a break, Terry McAuliffe has endorsed Joe Biden. We were expecting it maybe tomorrow, but the former Virginia governor is on the board.
Very important state forthcoming. Yep.
As that comes up. So a break in our coverage. There is the news of this hour, and certainly within the hour, we are going to hear from that man. Also, new numbers coming into Steve Kornacki. All of it covered live right here. Please stay with us.
And Doug.
Give me your hand! I can save you! Lots of money with Liberty Mutual. We customize your car insurance so you only pay for what you need.
Only pay for what you need.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
It's either the assurance of a 165-point certification process, or it isn't. It's either testing an array of advanced safety systems, or it isn't. It's either the peace of mind of a standard unlimited mileage warranty, or it isn't. For those who never settle, it's either Mercedes-Benz certified pre-owned, or it isn't. The Mercedes-Benz certified pre-owned sales event, now through March 2nd, only at your authorized Mercedes-Benz dealer.
I wanted more from my COPD medicine. That's why I've got the power of 1, 2, 3 medicines with Trelegy. The only FDA-approved once daily 3-in-1 COPD treatment.
Trelegy, the power of 1, 2, 3. Trelegy, 1, 2, 3. Trelegy.
With Trelegy, Trelegy and the power of 1, 2, 3. I'm breathing better. Trelegy works 3 ways to open airways, keep them open, and reduce inflammation for 24 hours of better breathing.
Trelegy won't replace a rescue inhaler for sudden breathing problems. Trelegy is not for asthma. Tell your doctor if you have a heart condition or high blood pressure before taking it. Do not take Trelegy more than prescribed. Trelegy may increase your risk of thrush, pneumonia, and osteoporosis. Call your doctor if worsened breathing, chest pain, mouth or tongue swelling, problems urinating, vision changes, or eye pain occur.
Think your COPD medicine is doing enough? Maybe you should think again. Ask your doctor about once daily Trelegy and the power of 1, 2, 3.
Trelegy, 1, 2, 3.
Save at Trelegy.com.
The Sleep Number 360 smart bed is on sale now.
Can it help keep me asleep?
Absolutely. It senses your movements and automatically adjusts to keep you both comfortable. It's our leap year special. Save up to $600 on select Sleep Number 360 smart beds. Plus 0% interest for 4 years on all smart beds. Ends Monday.
Plastic. It's our most dangerous addiction. So we took our worst vice and turned it into the DNA for a better system. We created Bionic and put the word out with GoDaddy. What will you change? Make the world you want.
The Bissell Crosswave Cordless Max lets you vacuum and wash your floors at the same time. Dry messes, wet messes. It even freshens area rugs. It releases clean water and Bissell formula. Microfibers mop while soft bristles scrub and sweep, and powerful suction pulls the dirty water into a separate tank. It's cordless for cleaning freedom. It even cleans itself.
And when you buy Bissell, you help save homeless pets.
To learn more, go to BissellCrosswave.com.
For the big events of the 2020 election, America turns to the networks of NBC News. From the first Democratic debate in Miami to that electrifying night in Las Vegas. And now, Super Tuesday, the most critical day of the race so far. No other news organization can cover it the way we do on NBC, MSNBC, and NBC News Now, giving you the clarity you need when you need it most. Super Tuesday on the networks of NBC News.
Here is the story of the night, the story of the hour. Certainly, we called it when the polls close, which usually means only one thing. We have clear and convincing evidence that when all of the votes are counted in South Carolina, Joe Biden is going to come out on top. 1% of it is in this hour. Steve Kornacki has more on the delegate math, which is really going to start to be the conversation.
Yeah, Brian, this is becoming a delegate race right now. Biden and Sanders coming at it tonight. We will see what the final numbers are, but I was setting this up a minute ago. We can show you here again, looking ahead to Super Tuesday, and David Plouffe was talking about this, the range of margins for Bernie Sanders coming out of California on Tuesday. It is a massive range right now, and it is going to depend on whether anybody else can hit 15%. I was just playing around with our delegate simulator in the commercial break right there, and if you set it so that no other candidate gets 15% statewide, you're looking at Sanders getting over 300, maybe like 330 delegates out of California. If you set it so 2 other candidates just get 15, that Sanders number comes down to like 200. It's a huge range. It's entirely dependent on other candidates hitting that 15% mark. As David said, single biggest variable. The other variable, too, we showed you in the Southeast here, states where, based on what you're seeing tonight, Biden has the potential to do very well with African-American voters, the potential to win. The other variable in these states to think about is Michael Bloomberg. He's been on the airwaves in these states with millions, tens of millions of dollars, while Biden has not been. Does Bloomberg hit that 15% threshold in a lot of these southern states where perhaps Biden is positioned to do very well right now? Would that cut into the delegate haul that Biden has the potential to get out of these states? And I mentioned Bloomberg as a complicating factor in those southern states for Joe Biden. 2 other complicating factors for Joe Biden. One of them lives in Minnesota. Amy Klobuchar, her home state goes on Tuesday. The polling we've been seeing out of Minnesota shows Klobuchar and Sanders doing very well there. Biden further back. Biden may lag in delegates coming out of a pretty big state there. And Massachusetts, you showed the scene from Massachusetts earlier. Elizabeth Warren's home state. Bernie Sanders campaigning there. There's a new poll out tonight. Sanders narrowly ahead of Warren there, but Biden much farther back. So again, Biden may lag in delegates coming out of Massachusetts, coming out of Minnesota, coming out of California.